Good evening. It is 5:30 on Wednesday, November 15th, 2023, and this regular meeting of the Sandpoint City Council is now called to order in council chambers at City Hall, 1123 West Lake Street, Sandpoint, Idaho. For the record, I am Council President Kate McAllister, and joining me on the dais are Councilors Deb Rule, Joel Aspero, and Justin Dick. Councilor Jason Welker is absent. Under the city's adopted code of ethics and civility, as the presiding officer, I am to identify law enforcement personnel in the room who will be serving as Sergeant at Arms for this evening's meeting. Tonight, we have Police Chief Corey Kuhn sitting at the back table. If everyone will please stand, we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First, I would like to recognize Nurse Practitioners Week with a proclamation. Whereas nurse practitioners play a critical role as a trusted providers of healthcare for patients in our state, and whereas nurse practitioners work to expand healthcare access in underserved communities, promote health equity in care, and improve health outcomes for all. And whereas patients depend on the more than 355,000 licensed NPs in the United States and 2,700 nurse practitioners in Idaho to diagnose, manage, and treat their chronic and acute health care conditions. And whereas NPs provide high quality primary, acute, and specialty healthcare services while emphasizing health promotion, disease prevention, health education, and counseling, guiding patients to make smarter health and lifestyle choices every day. And whereas the confidence that patients have in NP-delivered healthcare is evidenced by the more than 1 billion visits made annually to NPs across the country. And whereas more than 5 decades of research demonstrates the high quality of care provided by NPs. And whereas better utilization of NPs through modernized state laws and improved policies creates better health through a more accessible, efficient, cost-effective, and higher quality healthcare system. And whereas more than half the nation, including 27 states, the District of Columbia, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands, has adopted full practice authority legislation offering patients full and direct access to the outstanding care provided by NPs. And whereas leading governmental policy and policy entities, including the National Academy of Medicine, National Council of State Boards of Nursing, National Governors Association, and Federal Trade Commission, have taken notice of the benefits of providing the patients full and direct access to NP-delivered care. And whereas NPs serve as the provider of choice for many Idahoans and play a pivotal role in the health and welfare of our communities. And whereas Sandpoint is proud to recognize and honor the service of NPs to our state. Be it resolved, therefore, that I, Kate McAllister, Council President, hereby declare November 12th through the 18th, 2023 as National Nurse Practitioner Week in Bonner County, Idaho, in recognition of the countless contribution NPs have made over the past half century and will continue to make on behalf of the health and well-being and citizens of our state. Proclaim this 15th day of November 2023 in the city of Sandpoint, Bonner County, Idaho. And will Miss Cynthia Dalsing please come up? Let's do this officially. There we go. I know you do.
Just a couple of things. I'm a nurse midwife, retired nurse practitioner in Idaho. Nurse practitioners perform over 1 billion office visits a year in the United States. There are 2,700 licensed nurse practitioners in the state of Idaho, and I send out emails to 35 nurse practitioners who serve our community here. And so this is just an acknowledgement of people that you probably already have seen for your health care, whether it's for primary care or your anesthesia or at Kootenai Cancer Center. And so we would like you to just thank your provider for the care you get. And we are an integral part of the healthcare team here in Sandpoint and this community.
Very good. Are there any announcements from council? Nope. Any announcements from staff?
The weather is starting to come in, and we have a plan for winter weather, and we had updated our snow management plan about a year ago, and still have the same plan in effect this year. So last year, council and residents will recall that one of the significant changes that were made after several workshops about this was no parking rules in effect on the odd side of the street. So the odd side is the side with odd addresses, beginning December 1st and through March 1st. So beginning December 1st, we will be out enforcing parking on the even sides of the street only, and that allows our crews to get through, keep the width in the streets, and keep them passable. Otherwise, we have to do maintenance like we've done in the past, where we're doing pushbacks, and when we're doing pushbacks, that's then when you're seeing the heavy snow accumulations on the sidewalk. So last year we received a lot of public comment back about the streets and the new plan that council had approved and how well it worked. But it is a change for us again on December 1st to parking on the even sides of the street only, and that is in effect until March 1st. And people should have seen our note about that. If you didn't see it, we have announcements in our utility bills. That was in your last utility bill that came out in the last few weeks, and we'll be getting press releases and website notifications and things out again about this rule here over the next couple of days.
Great. Is that everything?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Next on the agenda is the public forum portion of the meeting, which allows the public to address council and my council regarding items listed on the consent calendar or on any topic not included on the agenda. If anyone in chambers wishes to speak now during public forum or during any other portion of the meeting, you must complete a comment sign-up form and hand it to staff. If you are on Zoom and wish to speak during general public forum, please raise your hand on Zoom at this time. To accommodate those who wish to speak on general items during public forum, as well as those who wish to speak on specific business items on our agenda, a total of 20 minutes will be dedicated to public forum at the beginning of the meeting. If you would like to speak and did not have an opportunity to do so, we will provide that opportunity by reopening the public forum at the end of our regular agenda. I will now recite the rules and procedure for public comment during the meeting. Council may not hear or take testimony during public forum on any planning and zoning matter that is before the city or is known to be a likely application. Such testimony is allowed only during a properly noticed public hearing. Matters that have been previously heard and decided by council may be determined to be inappropriate for public forum. Those in attendance shall not engage in disorderly or boisterous conduct, use threatening or abusive language, hold up or display any type of sign, speak out of turn, or clap or engage in any similar act which disturbs the meeting. Comments shall not be personally derogatory, nor shall they be personally directed at any individual, organization, or business. Issues regarding the performance of city employees constitute matters that must be discussed only in executive session and are not appropriate during the public portion of the meeting. Public comment opportunities during meetings are for comments only. Do not direct any questions to the council or staff and do not approach the dais. Also, please do not approach the clerk or other staff up here at the front tables, as this disrupts the meeting. You may inquire of staff at the back table who can provide assistance if needed. Unless otherwise provided, each speaker will be allowed 3 minutes. When it is your turn to speak, please introduce yourself and state whether you reside within Sandpoint city limits. Madam Clerk, has anyone signed up to speak during public forum?
Yes, Madam President. Glenn Mercurio.
Good evening. My name is Glenn Mercurio. I am not a Sandpoint resident. I'm a Bonner County resident. I'm here on my own behalf, and also, as some of you know, I run a rather large social media forum of Lake Ponderay boaters. Last month, we opened this up on our forum about the new blue necklace, looking for actual problems that we as boaters recognized. So I agreed to come down and address the council so that this would go on record. Two of the biggest things that stood out to us, the bridge underpass, right where it comes in, and there is no pictures of this, but the bridge underpass where you come into Sand Creek.
Madam President, I think Mr. Mercurio's comments should be taken under the downtown, under the discussion on the waterfront design competition.
Okay,
Take it at that time.
Okay, would you please wait till then, till we
Sure.
get to the agenda item?
That's
Thank
fine.
you very much, Mr. Mercurio. Madam Clerk?
Pam Duquette.
Good evening, Pam Duquette, Sandpoint resident. I'm here to ask you once again to offer one of the comp plan open houses to be on a weekend day, perhaps, or maybe in the morning instead of that 5 to 7 evening time. I know you've got 2 planned, which is awesome. Many of the constituents are just getting home, just picking up their kids, just trying to get dinner on the table, then getting their kids to bed. That's just a really bad time. And I've heard from a lot of people. My son would be one of them. I know you guys give up your dinner time. Also, you're elected officials. You knew this was going to happen. I know staff also, but that's their job. I'm just asking you to think of the people because I think people would really like to get involved. I want to say that I have seen more information on the comp plan flyer and the Daily Bee has been putting information about council meetings, which I think is wonderful. And the flyer is on your Facebook page. Also, it has been asked of me to suggest maybe putting the big agenda items like the comp plan and the waterfront downtown design plans as others at the beginning of the meeting, if that's possible. So people don't have to sit through 3 to 5 hours waiting to get to the bigger issues that they're really concerned about to have input on, and then they're too tired to engage or even comprehend. Just ideas. Also, I'm hoping that we wait until after the first of the year to close any of these. Holiday plans and travel is going to take people out of the area, and wait until the new mayor and councilors are seated. Seems a respectful thing to do for both the voters and the new electeds. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Duquette.
Janine Shepherd.
Hello, just wanted to come and pray for you guys before we begin. I'd love it if you'd join me. Lord, we come to you with thanksgiving for all your blessings. As we approach the holiday season, I pray that people's hearts are turned to you, both in thanksgiving for all you do, but also in considering the gift of Christ this Christmas. Please bless the mayor and council members as they discuss the agenda items. Help them to seek you in every decision, recognizing not only your sovereignty, but that your plan is good. Highlight the issues and give them wisdom that goes beyond themselves, helping them to hear your voice in each matter. You are a good father who longs to be in close relationship with each one of them. Please bring revival to our city and let it begin here, Lord, with these people that you love, who stand before you with open hands, waiting for your leading. Set our city on fire with your love. Help the residents here to feel your presence and your goodness. Help kindness that stems from you wash over our city, that everyone who comes here will know we are a city of the Lord. We have no hope apart from you, Lord. Holy Spirit, come and fill this place. We welcome you here. Show your presence to each one here in real and tangible ways. Help those who don't know you encounter you in ways that will make you undeniable. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. In Jesus' name, amen. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shepherd.
Kyle Schreiber.
Kyle Schreiber, Sandpoint resident. I just want to say I'm pleased to see that the city is actively recruiting for our citizens to join our committees. Although heads up, the hyperlink to the application is currently broken. But my concern is that of the 8 committees that are required by our city code, it appears we're only accepting applications for 2. And those happen to be the 2 commissions that are already meeting regularly. According to city code, the purpose of these committees is to, and I quote, provide a forum for dialogue and public input. Seems to me that that's something our community needs more of. Can a comp plan update truly claim to have public support when the public was denied their statutory forum for dialogue and input? So please, let's bring back this community's committees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schreiber.
Teresa Stevens.
Teresa Stevens, Sandpoint. I really feel there would be more interest in what's happening in Sandpoint if moving your father's memorial out of the way had happened to you. For the record, in 3 different conversations this week, I was told that we were too little too late about saving the Traverse Park. I have to differ on that sentiment and put the responsibility of this travesty where it belongs. 7 months ago, I got a call from a concerned citizen informing me of the plan to completely reform Traverse Park 7 months ago. I went to the park that day. I entered the area where the maps were. A number of people were there. Jennifer was there, probably Maeve, I don't know. There were tennis players. There were probably city council members. I was so intimidated by the Spokane people and all the smiles. I just said, no way on the Post-it note, and I left. It's intimidating enough to see myself speaking at this meeting. It's intimidating for people to get involved. Our family met with Maeve and Jennifer shortly thereafter, and it was explained to us that there was no turning back. But this would be a great thing for kids and tennis in Sandpoint. It would be much better than what's there now. And what can Maeve and Jennifer do to make it good for us, the Travers family? Benches out of the willow is what we came up with, but we weren't. That just wasn't what we wanted. We went to a number of city council meetings after that. Given 3 minutes to say our piece, the mayor watching the time ever so carefully, many people begging for a change. Our stance was always yes on the building, no on the location. It's ironic to me that the city government begs us to come to city council meetings, but honestly, it absolutely makes no difference. It's also ironic that this mayor would consider running for governor after this travesty. With the damage and division to our town, the councilwoman who ran for mayor could only tell us how difficult it is to be on council when one councilman actually resigned because he knew that we would not be heard. So the groundbreaking ceremony, for the record, after the 2 concerned citizens sat under that willow tree for over a week, being warned that they would be arrested, then the fence was installed. Then the tarp installed on the fence, then the tent inside the fence, the trucks against the fence.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
So that we couldn't see it all.
Thank you for your comment.
I can't be out of time.
Thank you, Ms. Stevens.
I hope you hear me without me saying anything else.
We have a few participants on Zoom who wish to speak. Gabe Gipp.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
So I was calling in because I wanted to bring attention to an atrocity that's currently going on right now in the United States, and that is the persecution of those who choose to use free speech. And I am just begging the city council here at Sandpoint to protect the freedom of speech amongst its citizens. There's a political prisoner named John Monato who's currently being held captive by our government for handing out literature, which brings to light many things that many people deny. And I'm just asking that the city council consider passing some sort of, I don't know what it would be, some sort of law or some sort of, statement, or make a statement on the fact that there are people being imprisoned for handing out literature. It's the equivalent to religious literature. And I just think it's very important that we protect all people and their freedom of speech, not small specific groups. John Monato is an amazing person. He has brought a lot of attention to many things which are being ignored by the media, ignored by our government, ignored by everybody in the community. If you would just go to gtvflyers.com, that's gtvflyers.com, you can see these flyers yourself and understand that they're nothing but truth and honesty and exposing the sad truth and the sad goings on of our country. And I just asked the Sandpoint City Council to consider passing some sort of initiative to protect freedom of speech, because there is no reason why people should be prosecuted or persecuted for handing out religious flyers or flyers that speak the truth. I just don't understand how we've gotten to this point in our country where freedom of speech is being used against people. And so I ask this city council within the great state of Idaho to just make sure that you guys stand up for those that choose to use their freedom of speech, and stand up for those that pass out religious flyers or whatnot. Because just because someone doesn't agree with what's on the flyer doesn't mean that it's not true, doesn't mean that they should be prosecuted nor arrested. I hope that you guys pass some sort of resolution that will protect religious flyering. And I just wanted to bring that to the attention of the city council, and just ask you guys to please consider looking into John Monato, a political prisoner who has been incarcerated for simply handing out religious flyers. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sandima Albeck.
Good evening. My name is Sandam Albeck, and I'm a Sandpoint resident. And since we had some prayers earlier, I'm actually going to shift what I had to talk about council. I am a Jewish man, second generation American. My family flew out of here, out of the Israeli region. They came here in the 60s during the first Israeli war. And I'd just like to read a little bit of scripture from the Talmud, our holy book. You'll find it in every synagogue in America and across the world. All right. On Yebamoth 98a, it states that all non-Jew children are animals. In Sanhedrin 57a, it states that what a Jew steals from a non-Jew he may keep, and when a Jew murders a non-Jew, there will be no death penalty. In Sanhedrin 58b, it states that if a non-Jew hits a Jew, he must be killed. In Kethabab 11b, in the Talmud, the Jewish holy book, it states that a man who engages in intercourse with a girl of less than 3 years of age has done nothing. Shabbat 116a, Jews must destroy the books of the Christians, also known as the New Testament. And Baba Metzia 114b, it states that the non-Jews are not human, they are in fact beasts. In the book of Zohar, Toldoth Noah 63b, when the Messiah comes, every Jew will have 2,800 Goyim slaves. Now, Goyim is a word that we use to refer to you non-Jews as. It's the same as cattle or beasts. In Gittin 57a, Jesus is in hell being boiled in hot excrement. And Baba Kama 113a, Jews may use lies or subterfuges to circumvent the non-Jews. Yalkut Reubenai Gadol 12b, the souls of non-Jews come from impure spirits and are called pigs. And finally, in Liber David 37, it states, to communicate anything to a non-Jew about our religious relations would be equal to the killing of all Jews, for if the non-Jew knew what we teach about them, they would kill us openly. And right now, I would like everyone in the council room to support Israel and their fight against these Hamas terrorists. It is Israel's right to kill, rape, and maim every man, woman, and child in Palestine, as they have been doing since we stole the land in 1947. The land that is rightfully ours. It is written in your Christian Bible that we wrote for you after the Romans came and took us over. And it is our right as God's chosen people to do as we wish with all the non-Jews on the planet. We are the rightful rulers of this planet. We're a 2% minority here in the States, and yet we're 80% of Biden's cabinet. All of Trump's campaign funders during his last election, they were my people, and our people will remain superior. So I'd like everyone to raise a hand for Jewish supremacy. Thank you. God bless Israel. Be'elam Allah. Shalom.
Rebecca Holland.
Here we go. Good evening, Rebecca Holland for the record. Whoops, you covered up my screen with this timer. For the record, as of today, 11:15, the city of Sandpoint has not been granted the necessary permitting to break ground at Traverse Park to construct a 32,000 square foot tennis pickleball facility. This I confirmed today with the Boise State Office of Land Water Conservation Grants. Anyone other than the city would be shut down and heavily fined for taking such action without having permits or stormwater plans made. But the city continues to dig into the ground with a bulldozer and demolish the playground equipment. City's promise to reconstruct the play set quickly and open to the public is nothing but empty words. There are many families with children living in apartments near the park who use the playground daily for their children's exercise and fresh air. There are many residents that walk the trails for their daily exercise, but there's been no notice given that the current asphalt trail will soon be closed and everyone will be diverted to use a gravel path bordering the chain link fence, circling 3 sides of the tennis court. For the older folks with walkers that live across the street, this gravel path will not be adequate. It is yet another aspect of the overall terrible park design by city staff. The fact that the city's large information billboard sits hidden behind a screened fence is a clear indicator that the city is not proud of what's being done to the largest green space in central Sandpoint. The 4 council members that are continuing in office need to step up and do the right thing now. Enough with the rhetoric and late to the table excuses. Put a pause on this mess. The $7.5 million bucket of Russell cash will handle change orders. The community's faith in you is on the line now. And consider into the future. If another wealthy family wants to give you a big wad of their legacy money, let's pretend to erect a large Ferris wheel in a public park, and all they want is their surname done up in bright lights. Would you, Joel, Justin, Jason, Deb, say yes again? Continue in this same fashion, voting 100% to pass whatever Stapleton puts before you. And it's going to be a rough 2 years ahead as the established residents resist this kind of yuppiness planning being pushed in our sweet town.
Thank you.
David Irving.
Good evening, City Councils. I see the timer. Oh, okay. Good evening, City Council. My name is David Irving. I've been a resident of Sandpoint for about 14 years now. I'm going to read you a little bit here and then get into some shocking facts. This is a quote from Alan Dershowitz, the famous lawyer who has defended Jeffrey Epstein, and we all know who and what that operation was. At least I would hope so by now. People say Jews are too powerful. We're too strong. We're too rich. We control the media. We have too much this. We have too much that. And we often apologetically deny our strength and our power. Don't do that. Don't do that. We have earned the right to influence public debate. So since Alan Dershowitz said it, I'm going to go ahead and talk about how they have come about attaining this power. But first, I'd like to say the International Holocaust Remembrance Association, they're the ones who write the law on what anti-Semitism is. And it says right here that it is anti-Semitic to make mendacious, dehumanizing, demonizing, or stereotypical allegations about Jews, such as or the power of Jews as collective, such as, especially, but not exclusively, the myth about a world Jewish conspiracy or of Jews controlling the media, economy, government, or other societal institutions. So Alan Dershowitz just told us that we're not supposed to apologetically deny their strength, but we're supposed to talk about it. But the Holocaust Museum, the IHRA, says that that's anti-Semitic and we can get thrown in jail for it. Now, 6 Jewish corporations own 96% of the media. That's Columbia Pictures, Showtime, Paramount, TMZ, CW, Fox, CNN, ESPN, HBO. And I'd like to read about how they got this. What did he say? The right to influence. We have earned the right to influence public debate. They have done this by placing their agents and helpers everywhere, taking control of the media and use it in propaganda for our plans, start fights between different races, classes, and religions, use bribery, threats, and blackmail to get our way, use Freemason lodges to attract potential public officials, appeal to successful people's egos, appoint puppet leaders who can be controlled by blackmail. Again, Jeffrey Epstein and Alan Dershowitz. Replace royal rule with socialist rule, then communism, then despotism. Rewrite history to our benefit. Create entertaining distractions. Corrupt minds with filth and perversion. Encourage people to spy on one another. Keep the masses in poverty and perpetual labor. Take possession of all wealth, property, and especially gold. Use gold to manipulate the markets. Like the Federal Reserve is ran predominantly by Jewish people. BlackRock, the largest asset holder in the world, is ran by Jews. And finally, blame the victim. What I read from is the Protocols of the Learned Elders of Zion. Check that out. WatchEuropa.com, gtvflyers.com/red-pills for all the documentaries you need.
Thank you, Mr. Irving.
Good for you.
Madam President, that has exhausted 20 minutes of our beginning public.
Caller was anti-Semitic. I want him arrested. I know people in the ADL. I'm going to call them right now. This is a travesty. How dare you let that anti-Semitism be spoken out in public?
What is happening?
Come get some, Kite.
Madam President.
Yes.
Title P.
You would like me to unmute? What would you like me to say? That's how the Jew acts. The Jew cries out in pain as he strikes you.
Recess for just a moment, please.
Cries.
Great. We are back in session. This will conclude the public forum. For those who wish to speak, public forum, there will be 20 minutes added to the end of the regular agenda. We will now proceed with the consent calendar. For the record, the total amount of bills is $1,254,096, reflecting $420,301.84 for regular payables and $833,718.12 for payroll. Does council have any questions, or are there any items council wishes to remove from the consent calendar? All right. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
This will be a roll call vote.
Councillor McAllister?
Yes.
Councillor Spudo?
Yep.
Councillor Dick?
Yes.
Councillor Rule?
Yes.
Motion passes. New business, we have just one item under new business this evening, so we will take up that item first before addressing old business. Under item 7A, council will consider authorizing submission of an application to the local highway technical assistant council for children pedestrian safety program grant funding. I will now yield the floor to construction manager Holly Ellis for a brief presentation.
All right, thank you, Council. Today we're discussing an opportunity to continue improvements on the Division Avenue corridor. The requested action before Council tonight is to consider authorizing staff to submit a grant application for up to $250,000 to LTAC for the Child Pedestrian Safety Program to continue improvements on the eastern side of Division Avenue between Superior Street and Pine Street. A little bit of background on Division Avenue. In 2019, a road safety audit was completed on Division Avenue between Michigan and Superior. That road safety audit seeks to identify safety issues and then also identify improvements to resolve those issues. That road safety audit was implemented into our multimodal transportation master plan that was adopted in 2021. That figure to the right shows the multimodal transportation plan concept that shows the improvements proposed on Division. The long-term plan for Division is 10 to 20 years out, so it's in our long-term plan. This plan would, as you can see, the improvements today, there's no planter strip, and we have a very narrow sidewalk. The full build out would provide planter strips on both sides of Division, a wider multi-use path, and a wider sidewalk. In this past summer, we were able to implement the first phase of Division, and we were able to improve a block and a half of Division Avenue, providing a wider sidewalk on the east side of Division and a planter strip between just north of the highway to Superior Street. The pictures here show the existing condition of Division Avenue. So just highlighting what we have out there today. The unimproved picture to the left shows the sidewalk, which is quite narrow. There's no planter strip, so there's no place for snow storage. Division Avenue is an arterial. It sees over 6,000 trips a day. It's also a truck route. We have very narrow sidewalk on the east side, sometimes between 3.5 to 4 feet, which makes it very hard for any folks who are traveling in opposite directions to pass. There's, again, no planter strip. The sidewalk is often directly adjacent to the curb. We also have several non-compliant ramps, curb ramps on this corridor. And while there's a lot of vehicle traffic on this corridor, it also serves over 1,600 students at a nearby school. So we're targeting improvements. You can see the picture on the right is what we were able to accomplish this summer, just 1.5 blocks, but it's 6-foot wide sidewalk. And now we have a planter strip with trees and a place to put snow. So phase 2 would seek to continue revitalization on the east side of Division Avenue, continuing at Superior, picking up where phase 1 left off, and head north to Pine Street. 6 feet of sidewalk would be installed. A 5.5-foot planter strip would be installed. This would provide for snow storage and a place for trees to be planted. With that project would also provide new curb and gutter, new ADA compliant curb ramps, and we would also narrow some existing driveways so that pedestrian crossings would be much shorter, which is safer. In these pictures, you'll notice they're highlighting a couple things here on this particular stretch of Division. There's some cross slope issue with the sidewalk. It greatly exceeds 2%, which is not ADA compliant. And then that bottom picture is a curb ramp that is not ADA compliant. It doesn't have the detectable warnings or a landing that are required. And then you can also see where that power pole is located. There's only about 26 inches to cross through that sidewalk. So it's very substandard. This is a project map of the proposed location. So what's in teal are some recent improvements that we've had. Pine Street, the north side of Pine, was completed in 2022. And then on Division in teal, you'll see there's highlighted the improvements on the east side that were from just north of the highway to Superior. And then in the middle in orange there, you'll see that this is connecting those gaps. And we would have some new 6-foot wide sidewalk in that corridor. Other things to highlight is you'll notice the close proximity to the middle school and high school. So the Child Pedestrian Safety Grant is what we used to fund the first phase of Division Avenue. And there's another opportunity for this funding. They're opening it up again for 2024. Again, the purpose for this grant is to address safety and mobility for children specifically. So you're positioned best if you're applying for a project that is adjacent or near a school. This grant is administered by LTAC. They're funding up to $2 million worth of projects with a max award of $250,000 per project. The project must be completed by December of 2024, and there's no match required by the city, but we will use our general fund to kind of stretch the limits of the project and provide survey and design. That's one thing the CPS grant covers construction costs, but does not cover survey or design efforts. So again, the requested action is before council, and I'm available if you have any questions.
And council have any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question for you, Holly. How much would it take to finish this whole thing? What are we talking in dollar amount if we wanted to get the whole thing done?
The whole Division Ave corridor is estimated $10 million.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this?
Yes, Madam President. Matt Deal.
Councilors and staff, thank you for having me. My name is Matt Deal. I'm the Facilities Director for Lake Pend Oreille School District, resident of Sandpoint, and I also oversee the Safe Routes to School program. First, I'd like to give a kudos to the city, Ms. Ellis, and the rest of the staff on the completion of last summer's project. I think it's a great improvement. Second, I am speaking in support of what is before you tonight and proposed. Third, I have a couple suggestions that can happen soon. Understanding it's 10 million to complete the stretch of roadway. First suggestion that can happen the first snowstorm. Discontinue plowing street snow onto the sidewalk on the east side division. Stop plowing street snow on the sidewalk on the east side division, and then continue to enforce the residents and businesses to remove their own sidewalk snow. There's the same amount of storage area as there is on the west side. I understand in the worst winters, this would require some snow hauling, but only in the worst winters. First idea. Second idea, knowing it's 10 million, you can accomplish real similar to the $10 million project with some simple striping of asphalt between pine and spruce or chestnut, narrow the lanes, restripe, draw in with paint this larger snow storage area. You still have a sidewalk that is viable, then enforce the residents removing their snow. So first step this winter, don't plow snow on the sidewalks, enforce the code. Second step, this grant is great. We'll get a little bit done, but let's get the rest of it safe. Okay, a couple ideas. I can be reached at any time by any of the city staff or you folks if you want clarification or more information. So let's get this safer for kids. And I have lots of pictures of kids walking in the street during the winter. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Mr. Deal. Madam Clerk, is there anyone else?
That is all that wish to speak on this topic.
Great. I will entertain a motion to approve the resolution authorizing submission of an application to the local Highway Technical Assistant Council for Children Pedestrian Safety Program grant funding.
Second.
This will be a roll call vote.
Councillor Dick?
Yes.
Councillor Rule?
Yes.
Councillor McAllister?
Yes.
Councillor Spito?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Under old business, we will now take up old business beginning with item 8A. Following the public hearing held and closed during council's October 18th, 2023 meeting regarding the preliminary plat for West Point Place, a proposed 4-lot subdivision in the vicinity of Ontario Street and Highway 2, council voted to postpone action until November 1st meeting to allow time for staff to fully evaluate the request of the developer, to phase final platting, and to provide additional time to take into consideration the public testimony heard and the issues discussed by council. On November 1st, council further postponed action of the December 6th meeting in order to reopen the public hearing, taking testimony from the applicant representative and offer opportunity for additional public testimony. As the applicant will be out of the country on December 6th, pursuant to the applicant's request, city staff requested via staff report that the reopened public hearing be held instead during council's December 20th regular meeting. Does council have any questions or discussion?
Madam President, real quickly, since we've been postponing this several times, there's a building going up on the corner of Division and Ontario there. I believe it's the EMS building. That thing has come quite a long way here. And I would ask of fellow counselors, if you haven't been over there, please drive over on that corner of Division and Ontario. It is already challenging to see, and we've revisited, we haven't visited this for, what's it been, almost a month now that we've looked at this and seen the planning and zoning. Things have changed quite a bit since then. So I'd ask you all to go down there and take a look before we actually get this on our agenda. That's all.
So are you saying you want to table this?
No, not table.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw that in as a comment here, just because it's changed the dynamic of that intersection right there. And it's challenging to see as far as that building is built up to the sidewalk, and it may bring up some alternative questions that planning and zoning did not get to deal with the first time when the applicant was before them.
Okay, thank you. I would entertain a motion to reopen the public hearing regarding the West Point Place subdivision preliminary plat during council's regular meeting scheduled for December 20th, 23. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
This will be a roll call vote.
Councillor Spudo?
Yep.
Councillor McAllister?
Yep.
Councillor Roll?
Yes.
Councillor Dick?
Yes.
Motion passes. For the final item on the agenda this evening, council will consider acceptance of the downtown waterfront design competition revised final report. And I will now yield the floor to City Administrator Jennifer Stapleton.
Thank you, Council President. What you have before you tonight is we will have a short presentation by Mark Sindel with GGLO. Phil Boyd is also online and was part of the team. He is with Welch Comer. And we also have Don Stastny, our competition manager, online as well for any comments. About a month ago, the team presented to council the final draft competition report. A reminder about what the competition was about and the purpose and what the report is and where we go from here. This competition was pulled together because we have a number of existing master plans that speak to our downtown, to arts and culture, to our urban forest, our multimodal plan, all of our various master plans that have been adopted. The idea with this downtown waterfront competition was to take all of those plans that had public input and citizen comment and pull them together into a single visionary document. That document does not replace all of those individual master plans, but it takes those plans and takes another look at recommendations for next steps, visions, priorities, particularly in the downtown core and on the waterfront, and melds those into a visual and a vision to work off. Throughout this process, there was a working through of where there may be conflicts between plans and presenting some of those challenges and working those through a vision. What's before you tonight is the final work of the team through this competition phase. As we've previously discussed, this is pulling these documents together again into a visioning document. And from here, this is where council, and you'll need to provide direction, whether tonight or moving forward, as to implementation and next steps, what you would like to see priorities, and really get into a next phase of public engagement. With the vision that is laid forward, even with City Beach down on the waterfront, as we've talked about before, it doesn't mean that we're going to construction tomorrow. It doesn't mean that it will be constructed exactly as shown within the vision. There becomes a whole new phase of visioning moving forward. But this is an opportunity, whether you want to move vision into deeper concept, with change, whether with public comment and changes, whether you want to move forward, as we had discussed at the last meeting, on some of the land use recommendation and implementation next steps. We had told council with the final draft report that we would come back at this meeting with some more detail specifically related to the land use recommendations and what that would look like in terms of implementation and a related timeline. So we're prepared to address that as well with council tonight at the end of the presentation. So with that, I will hand it over to Mark who's going to highlight a few of the changes that were made in the document from the last council meeting based on impact feedback and another technical review.
Thank you, Jennifer. Council, nice to be in front of you again. We are going to, as Jennifer said, keep this pretty brief. We went over at length a lot of the details of the plan. So for the most part, just want to point out a few modest revisions based on your feedback in the last presentation. We have been chasing through comments and modest edits. So I feel confident that this represents everything to date. So one of the things that was asked was to be a little bit more definitive about the zoning recommendations. A couple things to point out. This was the prior plan where we were recommending a First Avenue core overlay zone with special recommendations for updating code for building heights. We have increased that to go up Cedar to about 4th for that core. So there's an extension of that. The next piece of that in more detail, we cleaned up the graphics just to more clearly indicate that these are zoning envelopes we're looking at, not building designs. So the prior had, again, more graphics, but a little bit of this white box, which we know in the planning and design world, but could be misinterpreted for others not in the planning and design world. So a little bit of cleanup there. And then most importantly, we were more definitive with the recommendations as requested. The next thing we looked at were just some tidying up of some of the comments related to City Beach. This represents, I think, everything we've talked about to date. When we go to the plan, we've more clearly indicated the intent for ADA parking around the perimeter. We have removed any language about removing or relocating the Statue of Liberty and indicated that that is to remain unless anything changes, and then just some modest clarifications on the labeling and the legend related to some of the comments around the access and boat launch components. And then next, we did make some modest modifications related to the bridge. And actually, Phil Boyd is going to jump on and talk through those momentarily here. So Phil, if you are available, jump on in.
I am available, Mark. Thank you, Council, Madam Mayor, to participate. The thing that we had looked at originally on this, Mark, can you zoom in on the bottom image? The bottom, number 3, right there. Originally, when we had looked at the opportunity to extend Church Street through, we lined up the center line of Church Street with a potential extension to the east. What that did was require acquisition of 2 parcels of property. And what Jennifer asked us is it feasible to only acquire 1 parcel of property and still make it work, the hole in the ground property, for lack of a better word. And so what we did is we took a quick look at doing an offset intersection. So the bridge intersection, Bridge Street would be a little bit south of Church Street, just to confirm it met modern geometric standards for intersections, and it did. And so the answer to the question is, could we just acquire the hole in the ground property and still potentially accommodate a bridge extension through there and have a satisfactory intersection at Church and First? The answer to that is yes. So hopefully that captures the essence of that question.
Thank you, Phil. And we can get into that with any Q&A. And then lastly, as Jennifer referenced, we made some modest refinements to the next step implementation projects and are focused, and we can talk more about it in Q&A, on getting these particular pieces going pretty quickly based on the desire to make code recommendations and implement zoning changes, particularly in this area. So that summarizes the refinements since we were last in front of you, and happy to answer your questions.
Council, any questions? No.
Yeah, I have some questions. Can you take us back to the blue boxes for the massing? So I'm trying to understand why and what data was used to come up with a recommended height of 55 feet.
So we looked at the existing code, and as you see here, we modeled several scenarios. And it's our recommendation, which at this point, that's all it is, that height with the setback of 20 feet after working through and reviewing public comments and workshops with the technical advisory group, that struck a nice balance of being in keeping with the scale, context, and character of your downtown and allowing development, mixed-use development, which promotes walkability in your downtown in that location. So that was our assessment.
So economically, it wasn't based upon any data of building a building, because the tallest building on First Avenue is only 40 feet tall. And so I'm trying to understand how if we're trying to maintain historic character, I know there's a lot of moving parts to that, architectural features, et cetera, so on and so forth. But how did we, again, end up with 55 feet if the current tallest building is 40?
Yeah, good question, Councilmember. It's our opinion that works pretty well. There are also some complications with the soils that are going to require a fair amount of above average structural work and cost to make any of these buildings work. So again, just our recommendation, but our recommendation is that this works pretty well from our experience in studying this, and that if you reduce that much more, it is gonna be perhaps unlikely that anyone can make that work given the cost of developing these buildings with the soil conditions that you have. Our opinion is that we certainly don't want oversized buildings that don't fit with your downtown, but you also don't want to be in a position of not having anything happen for decades because it's infeasible.
Madam President. Thank you for that, Mark. If you could forgive my ignorance, explain to me or us, in case I'm not the only one, what the soil has to do with a 40-foot building or a 55-foot building. I'm not fully understanding that.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. So I think the basic premise is when you develop and build a building, obviously the more revenue generating square footage there is, the more you can, the larger the budget can be and the more you can offset costs. And I know for Sandpoint, 55 feet is not insignificant. It's generally in the mid-rise building category. So as soon as you start to have complicated or exorbitant structural systems to hold up a building of that size, which in the big scope of things for a downtown is a mid-size building, you start to get upside down pretty quickly in that the cost of putting the foundations in and doing the soil remediation is really hard to offset with the floors that you have above it. So it's a bit of a math problem that has to do with normal construction practices. And the more you have to put into the ground abnormally, the harder it is to make it work above the ground. So keep asking questions if that doesn't make sense. And Phil Boyd, if you want to tag on to that, if I'm not making any sense, let me know.
No, I appreciate that. And so just to help, so I've been asked a lot that sometimes this language is difficult for those who aren't able to make it to every meeting. And so what I'm going to ask is to maybe not only help myself, but help others. That you're recommending the 55-foot building with the setback. Can you please explain to us what the setback is? Is it to soften the height of the 55-foot building so it doesn't look like some big square brick?
Yes, I think generally yes. So yes, thank you. Good question again. So the idea here is that given the existing buildings, the overall building height, we think 55 is appropriate. But as we go up the building, setting the building back, once you get above 35 feet from the sidewalk, when you're walking down the sidewalk and you're looking on each side of the street or you're looking up, it really shortens the building to have that setback, right? So the taller portion of the building is further back and a little bit out of your view, and it breaks up the building and brings it down a little bit in keeping with the existing buildings. And I think from our standpoint, and I know there's a lot of strong opinions about this, for a downtown, even with historic fabric, 55 feet is a pretty reasonable and normal size of a building. And so when you have the setback after 35 feet, and if it's well designed, hence part of the implementation is doubling down a little bit on design guidelines because the devil's in the details on that one. We think this can work pretty well. Short answer to your question is building goes up 35 feet, steps back, and then goes up a little bit more, and that mitigates differences in height on either side of the street.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Mark. And so for example, our Columbia Bank or Umpqua now, that's a 65-foot building. This would be a 55-foot. Your concern is if it's down to 40 feet or anything of that size, if that's what if we change the code to, your concern is these buildings would stay vacant or there would be no change because of the difficulty of the soil situation. Am I hearing you correctly?
I think that is a distinct concern and possibility. I think the other concern and possibility is the more you limit that and the harder it works, the less likely you're going to have quality materials because it's just going to be hard to pull that off without being at a loss. And so this also strikes the balance, we think, of leaving the door open to the type of quality of architecture and materials that you want for a downtown building.
Appreciate you answering my questions. Thank you.
So I have another question about the building height. So it seems maybe it's not logic, it's my logic, that the shorter you build the building, the less you would need to worry about the soils because the building would be lighter in and of itself. It's just like building a driveway as opposed to building a landing strip for an international airport. You probably build 6 inches of cement as opposed to 20.
Couple of things, Councilmember. So yes, another good question. Normally, that's generally true. With the soil conditions that exist, anytime you are going to go up more than a story in this situation, it gets really complicated really fast. This is not really a normal situation.
And does that, is that mainly for the buildings on the water facing side of First Avenue, or is that for all the buildings that come up Cedar Street and are on the non-water side of First Avenue?
There are some issues throughout, but the issues are definitely most acute along First Avenue. And Phil Boyd, if you want to add any more detail to that, jump on in.
Yeah, I'll just add that what we know about that stretch of buildings along First Avenue on the east side is the foundation style would have to be driven pilings. It's not a spread foundation like you would typically see for a building where it's concrete. And so when you get into driving pilings, as Mark said, you know, just the effort of getting there is so expensive compared to a traditional concrete spread footing foundation. And that goes back to the idea of when you get to 55 feet, you're trying to strike this balance between economics and the view shed and all the urban corridor things that we're all sensitive to. So you want to provide enough opportunity so someone can build a driven pile foundation, use good materials on the building so it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's not unnecessarily large. So it is, I think it's a balancing act, which is always a challenge, but that's what we're faced with a lot in life, is trying to strike a balance between making it economically feasible. And that's hence the recommendation that is shown in the plan.
Madam Mayor. Yeah, you good?
Go ahead.
So again, I just want to walk this through to make sure it's clear, not only for myself, but the public. The 55 foot, because how much it costs for the foundation, we want to make it better opportunity for the builder, the owner of the property, to encourage them to build where it would not be financially worth it to keep it lower to 40. Is that correct?
Councilmember, yes, that's the premise. And I do want to say that doesn't exactly make it easy. Even at 55 feet, we think it's a bit of a stretch. So I just want to reinforce that. Hopefully this still works. There's a chance that even that's tough. And I think Don Statsny can weigh in here.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm kind of going back in some of my urban design training and education and experience of what's going on. When you walk down a street, your perception of the building face next to you is about 2.5 stories up. And it's just kind of the realm of what you are conscious of going down the street. Now, obviously, if you're looking across the street at a certain building height, that would be impacted as well. So the idea that they've come up with about a total building height, but with the setbacks at the lower level, you're still developing the same kind of scale along the street, but you are enabling the developer to get enough building mass, marketable square footage to allow them to improve it. In thinking about this over the last 9 months, 10 months, year that you all have given me the opportunity to work with you, I think we know that if you are able to somehow coalesce a number of the properties together in development, that you could save on the overall structural, because you could put down piers at a reasonable level and maybe share structure across more than one property. Now, those are elements that will have to be developed as you go forward and go towards implementation. But there are ways to take care of this very difficult subsurface situation just by maybe the way it's packaged in a lot of ways. And the recommendation I think that they've come up with is a workable recommendation. Again, by accepting this, it isn't accepting that per se, because one of the first implementation things is looking at the overall zoning and heights and going in this in a lot more detail.
Don, I appreciate that. the reason I'm asking all these questions is because the vibe I'm getting from the citizens is they'd probably rather see a hole there than anything larger than 65 feet. So that's something that we're obviously going to have to talk about and deal with. And thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah.
Even if
I understand that completely. And I think it just takes a more careful consideration about what you see and what you really do. And it's the setback at the upper levels is very important as far as the scale of the street.
But I trust you understand our dilemma here.
I do.
So yeah, that's why I appreciate you answering those questions. So thank you very much.
And Don or Mark or Phil, this is Justin. Can you guys scroll up a page so that we can see the existing code? Because right now you're recommending 55 with a setback. And if you look up in the top left corner on the right side, the existing code right now is a 65-foot height limit and a 10-foot setback above 25 or above 45, right? So those developers theoretically could build to that today, right?
Correct. And the setback is, there's a little nuance. I think it's 10 feet or 10% of the lot, whichever is greater. So it might be a little more than 10 feet in some of these scenarios. But that is correct. I think Mayor Shelby off of mute. Jump on in.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to provide some clarity here. So the code is actually 35 feet maximum height, but it's allowed to go to 65 feet only in the case that the structure allows for structured parking or for residential above or behind existing commercial. And I think that's a really important distinction that we need to keep in mind and that was very intentionally put in the code back in 2012 as a result of the comp plan that was developed in 2009. And the reason is we heard resoundingly from the public during that comp plan development process in 2009 that we really wanted to encourage residences downtown because it creates, it's good for business. It creates an active streetscape. It also is good for public safety when you've got more eyes on the street and more eyes on the sidewalks and on businesses. And it creates a better living environment, a better livability when you have residences in a highly walkable, highly amenitized area. And then with the parking, we've heard for decades from the downtown business community and as well as residents and visitors that there's always a need for more parking downtown. And so this was created, this additional bonus of 30 feet was created as an incentive in the code to encourage developers, to encourage property owners to integrate either residence or structured parking into the structure, and which comes at a great cost, right? It's very expensive to build structured parking. It's very expensive to build additional building heights. So there has to be some commensurate, money that some additional rents or what have you to be able to accommodate that. And everything that Mark has shared here is spot on in terms of the additional structural cost and foundation cost and other considerations that go into this. So I think it's really important for council and for the community to keep in mind that if we, I don't think we want to lose these incentives because we still want to encourage developers and property owners to either build structured parking or build residence into downtown structures. That's a good thing, and we've heard from the public resoundingly that that's an important issue. So I just want to make sure that doesn't get lost in the discussion here, and I would invite Mark or anyone else on the team to respond to that if you've had direct experience in other communities that you worked in where an incentive program like this built into the code has been successful in encouraging the kind of development that a community wants to see, rather than just saying, oh, you can build to, whether it's 55 feet or 45 feet or whatever, But without an incentive program, then we're not ensuring that we're actually getting the kind of built environment that we really want.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, we absolutely concur and agree with what you put in place and what the mayor so clearly brought up, which I thank you for doing that. And we are not proposing any changes of that. We're just proposing modest changes to the height and setback because, back to the mayor's point, we've seen that type of incentivization be very successful and help you as a city achieve some of the broader goals that were mentioned. And it contributes to walkability. It opens the door a little more broadly to workforce and other housing when you allow those incentives and allow those additional heights. So we think that's strong. We're not in any way proposing to change that. And not to get too philosophical, but one of the things we talked about in the document that we think is important is the history of Sandpoint as a timeline, past, present, future. And we're creating history through what we're doing, right? And so I don't think it's helpful to myopically look at existing buildings in your downtown and say, we need to match those exactly. I think it's very important that we don't diminish that character and that we're in context keeping with that, but we're creating history for 50 years from now, and what's done should be appropriate and represent the time and place that you're in 2023, 2025, 2030, or 2030, and be representative of that. So again, we think this strikes that balance of continuing to build out the history and identity of Sandpoint in an appropriate way that is forward-looking without disrespecting the past.
Madam President, a couple things just for transparency. I'm a little confused. Can staff please, just for everybody to know what's going on? Are you running mayor or Shelby running mayor today?
I'm running the meeting. He was
Okay.
having technical difficulties.
Oh, okay. That's helpful to know. So thank you. I saw some shocked faces, including my own. The other thing, and to say thank you guys, Shelby, thank you for explaining all that. I think, again, a concern that I'm hearing, and again, we're not voting on anything today about building heights, but we talk about incentivizing developers to build housing. We get laughed at a lot when we talk about that because the housing that's proposed, even on the whole of the ground on the corner there, again, I'm a free market guy, so I'm not going to tell a business what they have to rent their housing out for, but I find it hard to believe that any developer that's going to spend that much money on a building is going to be building condos or houses that are affordable. Not that they have to, in my worldview, but for the average citizen. So I think it's important that we think about that as we move forward, that why do we want to shorten the height? Why do we want to keep it as it is? And I really hope the public gets engaged with this one. It's going to be a very important topic. So just want to throw that out there. I don't see much affordability, again, not that they have to, but I don't think it's going to meet the needs maybe of what we're looking for, but that's why we'll open to discussion later on.
Yeah, Madam President, maybe this is for staff here, because I think this is an important conversation to have. And certainly we've all heard it, phone calls, emails. There's enough in this right now for a ton of public engagement moving forward, from building heights, from massing, from land use, zoning, the historic preservation in the carousel. And I do like that this has all brought this to the forefront right now. And I'd like to direct staff, if we can start, I think building heights would probably be the first workshop that needs to be tackled. You guys might have some different feelings on it, but kind of looks in order of what I'm seeing from the community is building heights, zoning, land use, historic preservation. And then I think there's a big piece on this on the carousel as well, too, that this is our opportunity to bring the public engagement to the forefront after this evening and start setting up these workshops. Because again, what we're voting on tonight is the acceptance of a final report. We're not voting on the redesign and change of City Beach, a new bridge or setting, right? We are now, they've been asked to do something. They're turning in their final right now that should set up the public engagement that moves forward from here on out. So I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Is there anything else besides building heights, land use, zoning? I guess one other question for you, Mark and Phil. Did anything change on the phasing and implementation of this on your years 1 through 5, I believe? I'm sorry, I think our pages might be a little different, but 143. Because I thought, Councilor Welker did a really great job the last time we were up here of talking about what is actually real. What can we glean off of this? What can we start working on as a community? I know we had one community member got up that wanted to talk about the boats. And I think this is an opportune time to have those discussions moving forward. But phase 1 is a lot of stuff that needs to be done in this community right now anyway, in terms of getting on to Superior and shoring up, going straight or turning right, Bridge Street first and Church, trying to figure that out, parking up on that area as well too. So maybe you can tell me, did anything change? Did anything drop out of phase 1 or move into phase 2, 3, or 4?
Thank you, council member. So a couple things. We did make some modest refinements, nothing major, as we presented before. Let me just see if I can bring that up. Bear with me. We were focusing on, as you said, the basic infrastructure projects, things that you're going to need to do anyway from an infrastructure standpoint, and then need to put things back. So those are things that you mentioned. Then the longer phase were what we would call the more aspirational things like the ice ribbon or the event pavilion and boardwalk extensions. Those are phase 4, 15 to 20 years out. Phase 1 is the extension of your downtown streetscape to the south, some of these basic elements. For the most part, I think that stayed the same and was consistent with the feedback and response that we had heard from you. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit more for your sake and for the public's sake and seeing what those things are. But to your point, most of these are pretty necessary, immediate things that start as an infrastructure project and have more stuff put on top, whereas the larger aspirational or more expensive things are here. The bridge, this, and there may be some questions about this, was based on what our understanding of when that bridge would need to be replaced or have substantial improvements in it. There might be some debate about that, but that was based on the information that we had.
Well, Mark, thanks for bringing that up. Maybe Jennifer, city staff, can talk a little bit about Bridge Street, where we're at with it. It's my understanding it was built in 1969. Is that right?
Yes, I believe Holly is really prepared to speak to this tonight because she's been our lead on taking a look at what we need to do. And currently we have under contract and have been working now for about a year on how we implement needed repair and maintenance on the bridge. We're looking at right now in, as we look forward to next year, a minimum of $600,000 of improvements that need to occur. But I'm going to hand it over to Holly to really be our lead, and I can help fill in on the bridge.
Sure, and I can answer whatever questions. I don't know what detail you want to go into, but yeah, our bridge was built in 1969, so it's 54 years old. Back when it was built, you can typically expect 50 to 70 years. Bridges greatly vary in how long they last. So that doesn't mean that you replace the bridge, but it means that you start to consider and plan for it. And I would say that's where we're at. So ITD does an inspection every 2 years for our bridge. They do inspections for the state. And this is in accordance with national bridge inspection standards. When they assess the bridge, they provide a condition assessment report that kind of gives us the status and provides the condition, rating it anywhere between 0 and 9, 0 being failed and 9 being excellent. It also provides maintenance recommendations, and it's very specific to maintenance. So for example, a replacement would not be considered a maintenance item. But we do have some upcoming improvements, as Jennifer noted, $600,000, hopefully next fall, winter, that we can rehab our piers that are failing. What we're looking at right now is the bridge is in fair condition. So those steel piled piers have started to deteriorate. And if our bridge gets to a condition that goes below fair, it would enter poor. We would have to put weight restrictions on our bridge. And that would be really critical in Sandpoint. There's a lot of communities that can live with a bridge that's in poor condition. The significance here in Sandpoint is that we have a lot of upcoming development across the bridge, and we also have our water treatment plant. So we are really trying to avoid having to have load restrictions implemented on our bridge. So it's really critical to keep it in a good condition. This is where we start to really invest our dollars when we are having a bridge that's starting to have, the longer the life, the longer a bridge is used, it becomes worn and those improvements will become more costly. So the question which we are going to continue to ask is, how much maintenance do you put into this bridge? How much investment, and when do you consider replacement? Which is why that 10, 15-year plan ahead for replacement was identified, and it's a target. So we have critical maintenance that we're targeting for next fall, and there's more maintenance to come. We have Keller and Associates, they're a structural engineering firm on board, and they've identified $2 million of maintenance improvements needed in the next 10 years. So there's significant investment coming up.
And I just want to remind council that we, even before the design competition was ever thought of or dreamed about, we had workshops down at the bridge. I think it was just before you came on, because I know Jason was there, and I believe Deb, we were there, and we were talking about the downtown waterfront, and we were told then, and we were shown about some of the conditions in the piers when Amanda was here, about how they will need to be repaired. And again, it's not, we're going to replace it next year, but it's about 10 to 15 years down the road to do that. And so I don't want people to think that this is just because of the design competition. We've been looking at this bridge for a while. And thank you with your engineering expertise for giving us that information.
The other piece I'd just add briefly is funding is a very important, obviously we're going to have to look for funding. And a lot of these bridge grants that we look for, if we put an application in for tomorrow, you don't see that money for 5 or 6 years. So it's really important to plan for replacement and look ahead so that we're not scrambling.
Okay.
Yep. Maybe not the right time, but we're short council members, but I got to use the restroom again. So.
Okay, we will pause for just a moment.
Thank you. I got it.
That is
too much caffeine.
Forrest Gump.
Council is back in session. Any other comments, questions, etc.?
A better comment. I did see people taking pictures of the different phases, and it is on our website. Just want to let everybody know that, so you can go on there and check it out. Just
all right. Any other questions, comments?
Madam President, if we could go back, Mark, could you pull up the page on the land use implementation recommendation next steps? So the next step implementation projects, this primarily is focusing on design elements and land use, as opposed to the other phasing map where you're looking at more infrastructure projects, capital projects. That's the difference between these two in the book, but they're both contained in there. And I think sometimes you can see the visuals and go down and think this is a plan that's all about capital projects and things we're going to do. But it was a very critical element throughout all of this, particularly driven by our arts, culture, historic preservation plan. And that plan that had been adopted by council was the first of historic preservation master plans. So that was our first real deep dive into historic preservation. Even in 2009, our comp plan, there wasn't a lot of discussion in the 2009 comp plan around historic preservation. The current draft for the comp plan update references this plan with significantly more recommendations, prioritization around historic preservation. And that then again informed this plan. And that's where too, the difference for reduction of building height, much of that is informed by that historic preservation, preserving the character of the downtown, which is a difference that we have from where we were in 2009. We had talked about this at the last council meeting, next step implementation projects relative to land use matters. The recommendation would be the priority is around the downtown building design guidelines, historic preservation guidelines, and First Avenue and Cedar Street core zoning implementation. We had much discussion about is it the one over another, and the recommendation relative to the land use implementation would be you're moving forward with all three of these simultaneously. There isn't a one over the other, and certainly initial workshops could be focused on building height as opposed to downtown building design guidelines, but these things are really related to one another. One change in and of itself isn't accomplishing the overall goal of protecting the historic character, feel, and the historic buildings in the downtown, as well as the view sheds and the environmental concerns related to the waterfront. We did sit with the team, and Amy is not here tonight, but we did go back and forth through the team looking at what would an implementation plan at a very high level look like, and what would timelines look like. And if council wants to move forward with the land use steps as outlined in the plan. And again, this is where a whole lot of public input begins around these activities. This would be public workshops. This is going to require public hearings before planning and zoning, before ultimately coming to council. This is kind of a deep dive into all of these things, but in terms of initial workshops, in terms of drafting language so that there is something for the public to initially respond to, we believe that that can be accomplished in the first quarter of 2024. So we could get underway with that. Ultimately, as advised by our land use legal counsel, before making further zoning changes, we need to get the comp plan completed. And unless council decides to extend that process with the existing scheduled workshops, even if you wanted to add a couple of additional workshops, there has to be time for changes to be made and incorporated, as well as discussed and scheduled for a public hearing. So you're not looking at final comp plan coming back until first quarter of 2024 either. So probably not until February, perhaps even March. So drafting of this, if this is a vision and going down, could occur simultaneously, but really the deep dive into it and ultimately adopting changes would need to occur after the comp plan is completed.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? Okay. Madam Clerk, are there anyone from the public who would like to comment?
Yes, Madam President. Helen Newton.
Yeah. Oh, we should have left the boat guy. Helen Newton, a resident of Sandpoint. This plan before you tonight is so incredibly not Sandpoint that it is difficult to know how to get that message across to you. I thought the election sent a clear message that we wanted to stop what was going on and slow down, give time. Please don't make any non-emergency decisions until the new mayor and council are in place. Give them the opportunity to weigh in on major decisions with fresh ears and eyes. According to the updated schedule in the plan, it said this began February 21st through October 18th. That was less than 1 month ago. 1 month is not an adequate amount of time for you to thoroughly review something of this magnitude and adequately consider the ramifications of the recommendations contained in it. The document says the plan benefited from input of longtime Sandpoint residents, and yet I could not find who any of these longtime residents were. Conversely, it goes on to say that public engagement was limited. It then touts the survey process. Only 47 surveys are recorded. When I consider the verbiage and the drawings proposed for the city beach, my heart sinks. I close my eyes and I hope it was just a brief nightmare. And then I open my eyes back up and I see that it's still there. There is so much work to be done on this element of the plan. I can't begin to fathom it. Who is pushing all of this and why? Who is it that you believe you are considering this for? One look through this document tells me that it has not been requested by a public outcry. The message remains the same. Stop. There is no urgency. Delay this. Give it a few more weeks before you take any action and let the new people be on board. You say that this is just a plan. You're adopting it as a report. It's not set in stone, but I spent enough years at the city that I know how quickly things get set up in concrete. I hadn't included this in my remarks until I heard all of this discussion. But I must say, I do not give two hoots about accommodating the economic feasibility for developers, and I don't think the city council should either.
Thank you, Ms. Newton.
Glenn Mercurio.
Before you start that timer, can you bring up the picture of the boat going underneath the railroad trestle? Because that's important.
Mark, would you be able to do that?
You're gone.
I can. Yeah, there we go. Okay.
The new finger dogs and the railroad trestle. A little bit hot. The one up. That's the one. Thank you. Okay,
This,
once again.
bear with me. This might. Well, okay.
Yeah, that one's fine. Perfect. That's a perfect shot. Once again, I'm Glenn Mercurio. I'm not representing just myself. We have a large social media forum that is 2,300 plus Lake Ponderay local boaters. We're very strict about local people in there. Like I said, a few people are members there. We brought this up. And what I'm going to address are simple safety issues that us as boaters were very concerned about. Right now, where that little white boat is going through, and you can really see it in that picture because you took it from Google Earth, that's all milfoil. Right there to the southwest where that little yellow kayak is. That's total milfoil and it's very shallow. It's also full of riprap. You have to approach that the same way that white boat is. It has to be approached that way. But let's keep in mind, this is an outflow. There's a current going right towards those docks. As people are coming out, they're being pushed. As you're sitting there waiting for them to come out, you're being pushed into those docks. Now, I don't know how many of you actually boat, but holding a boat in position is hard. Here's where it gets dangerous. On the west side, the inward side was where Action Water Sports used to launch their rentals. It was bad enough with just them. The proposal is where number 16 is to be putting paddle boarders and kayakers into that area. Now you're putting all the paddle boarders and all the kayakers and all the motorboats, all with propellers spinning, trying to get through that little spot. That needs to be dredged. We're really concerned it's too tight. It's tight now, it's going to be tighter. The other concern was the parking area, or not parking area, but the launch with the little number 27 right there, just below number 27, that circular drive. One of our handicap members brought up that his boat and trailer, and I got to agree with them, because the average boat is 24 foot on Lake Ponderay, 32-foot trailer, 17-foot half-ton truck pulling it. You're at almost 50 feet. We are very concerned that that is not enough room, and he's really concerned because he's a handicapper. So he can't get out and move his stuff. Some of us can, he can't. So that little spot at number 27 where that tree is, that needs to be opened up and straightened up so you can pull in and back in. That'll alleviate the congestion. That was our big thing. One of the things we really need to keep into consideration is a lot of our boats have dual props with 2 props on them. They are Vegematics. You put people in the water there and we're trying to hold position, it's going to get dangerous. And we're really concerned about how dangerous that is. And we'd actually like to use those docks and go visit some restaurants up there. So please keep our safety concerns in mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mercurio.
Kyle Schreiber.
Hi there, Kyle Schreiber, Sandpoint resident. I have 100 comments about the specifics that aren't going to fit into 3 minutes, but I will say that I've spoken with a lot of members of our community over the last 2 months, and some of them showed some interest in some of the things that are in this plan, but the vast majority of people do not support these changes, and they question why we're even looking at this right now. I realize that most of this is going to be funded through urban renewal dollars, but I believe that we should only move forward as if we were funding these projects with new taxes or bonds that were voted on by the voters. Because while some of these projects might be nice to have, we need to ask what we're willing to give up in order to have them. So I encourage you guys to table this item until it is removed from our comp plan's implementation table, because otherwise you are creating an imperative to move forward with it tonight. We can move forward with these necessary code changes without committing ourselves to the rest of the changes. We should have done that a long time ago. Speaking of which, I do want to reiterate my support for the 45-foot height limit. I would point out that the difference in the potential square footage between the recommended solution and the 45 feet is only 8% difference. And it's not just about First Ave. If you let First Ave go up to 55 feet, then everything behind it is going to have to go higher to get that view. So thank you. Have a good night.
Tom Bacawi.
Hi, Tom Bacawi, Sandpoint resident. Witnessing the presentation at last council meeting and then the changes here. The thing that I've noticed is this community is actually in violent agreement. We all agree that new development needs to fit our town's culture and should be a positive for the community. But we can't just stick our head in the sand and say that we don't want any new development. The free market is going to build on these properties regardless. Much of the areas to be developed are on private land. The city has limited tools to affect the design and ensure development is consistent with our community. For example, our current building heights could generate a giant building, and there's really not a lot the city can do to stop that. This is why I feel we need a new urban renewal district. Affordable housing, public access, and necessary infrastructure don't just happen by the good intentions of out-of-state developers. Without incentives, we get luxury condos for short-term out-of-state buyers, We get private water access and private views of our lake. That's what we get without any incentives. Our downtown area is going to see a lot of new development over the next 20 years, regardless of any action that the city takes. Without a new urban renewal district, we will miss out on the bulk of the revenues these developments will generate as they go to other taxing districts. These funds can be used for public access, affordable housing, and infrastructure, and ensure that the development does happen, fits our town and benefits our community. And just a side note, so my office is downtown. I'm on the second floor. I've got a view of the Canada. And if I stand at my window and look up, I can see about that much lake. And that's with the current building heights. And I'm on the second floor. So I actually, one, really appreciate what GGLO did with doing the mass blocks and everything, because you can see how it fits. And again, we're not blocking anybody's view at 45 feet and then the 10-foot setback. Like there's nobody that's currently getting a view of that right now. So I think some of that might be a little bit, well, again, I also agree with the recommendations for the building heights. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy.
Dan Logan.
Dan Logan, city resident. Thanks for your service, guys. I'm going to kind of reiterate some of what you already heard, but sorry, I wrote it at home. A recent election told me that citizens of Sandpoint are not interested in spending city dollars on big downtown changes to enhance the tourist experience in downtown. Could we use some more boat parking at City Beach? Sure. But the park itself is wonderful just like it is. Should we put the carousel in the small parking lot along the creek, or maybe on the lawn by the snack bar where the kids can run right up, hop on without leaving the beach area and not have to walk down busy streets to get to the creekside spot? Do we need a new bridge that's going to cost millions of dollars, or maybe do the repairs the state has determined it needs for way less money? Do we need to build a functional stormwater treatment on Farmers Landing? Yes, but we don't need to spend millions of dollars on boardwalks. The point is, all this is not as necessary as fixing our city streets that in many cases you have to swerve around to avoid bad potholes, fixing sidewalks that in many areas are unsafe for people to even use, fixing underground infrastructure for water and sewer, and getting our sewer plant in order. These are what the citizens are interested in. We've already seen a lot of citizens upset about the curve, Traverse Park, and feeling like their voices aren't being heard. I would ask that you consider not making any decisions on this downtown water design until the newly elected members of council and mayor are able to bring in their voices and recent voices of the voters. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Logan.
Tara Brady.
Hi, my name is Tara Brady. I live outside city limits, and this is my very first time speaking, so I'm super, super nervous. I was born and raised here in Sandpoint, and now I'm raising my children here. The first of my family came to Sandpoint roughly 140 years ago in 1882. There is hardly a place in Sandpoint that doesn't hold a memory from my childhood, my parents' and my grandparents' childhoods, which can sometimes thoroughly irritate my children. And I know I'm not alone. There are still many of us living here that feel the same way. To say that I care deeply about this town would be an understatement. I am here to state that I am against moving forward with the downtown waterfront redesign, and I believe the council should vote to table these plans until the new council and new mayor come into office. I believe that we should be managing the growth that we already have instead of trying to create more. In light of what has been happening with Traverse Park, I feel that there is a lot of distrust for the current council, and because of that, any more major decisions should be put on hold so that more community input can be gathered. I also believe for it to be unethical for a sitting mayor to be on the jury panel making decisions about the downtown waterfront redesign, all while managing and operating an investment real estate company who is advertising and selling real estate investments in Sandpoint and also using the downtown master design as advertising on his website. This seems to be a huge conflict of interest. Any changes being made to Sandpoint should be for the people who are already living here and not for the people who you are trying to attract. We do not want our downtown to look like what Coeur d'Alene has turned into. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brady.
Pat Holland.
I'm Pat Holland, city resident, born and raised in the area and business owner since 2010, running a boat rental operation and water sport instruction school located in Sandpoint Marina. I'm going to address specifically the build out of the docks on the south side of City Beach, extending into the center of the channel of Sand Creek. If I have time, I will address other parts of the project as well. I have had a U.S. Coast Guard captain's license for 18 years and have extensive professional experience operating boats and accessing Sandpoint Marina from the water. I've driven under the train bridges countless times over the last 14 years, and I've seen the massive influx of new boaters to the area. And I believe it'll only get busier. With the current layout, we already have a bottleneck passing under the train bridges. When done properly, 2 boats can pass at the same time. When done improperly, it's a congested area. I have personally witnessed boats having to slow down or stop because they're waiting for other boats to pass under the bridges. When this occurs, they have floated into docked boats in Sandpoint Marina, causing damage. If you extend the docks into the main channel of Sand Creek, you will do 2 major things that will negatively impact boaters. First, you will reduce the early season and late season access to Sandpoint Marina by building docks in the deepest part of the channel. I know exactly where that deepest part of the channel is because I operate boats through it from approximately mid-May to and early October, depending on water levels. Second major negative impact will affect all boaters trying to access either Sandpoint Marina slips or the fuel dock, which is the only fuel dock in Sandpoint, 15 minutes away to the next. As well as all other boaters trying to access the Sand Creek Boardwalk to go eat at local restaurants or go shopping. This is because the angle approaching the left turn under the train bridges, if you are coming in from open water, will be a much steeper angle than it currently is, and the visibility will also be greatly reduced. If this is the case, you will see an increase in congestion, and I believe more boat collisions will occur, making it a less safe passage for the public. Sorry, I got to skip a few things there. I do like some of the proposal stuff, adding Sand Creek, extension of Sand Creek Boardwalk to Cedar Street Bridge, doing a few other things. Please do not accept this proposal in its current form. It is okay to slow things down and get it right. Do not push this through. I'm happy to help the design team modify these designs to better match our local community. Overall, I don't like the look of the proposal. I personally think it looks ugly. Our local scenery is the attraction around here, not what the humans build. Please keep it that way.
Thank you, Mr. Holland.
Thanks, guys.
Ellie Sisness.
Good evening, Madam President and Council. I'm Ellie Sesness, a 38-year-old resident, I'm not 38 years old, 38-year resident of Sandpoint and chair of the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. I'm here tonight in favor of this visionary plan for Sandpoint's downtown and area. I've been continually impressed by the time and research put into this competition and the resulting ideas for solving some of our bottlenecks and issues in the downtown area. What I've been hearing from the community is that the historic preservation and design guidelines are what has to be the priority. This plan is an incredible resource of how to achieve that goal. Our historic buildings in Sandpoint are around 100 years old. It is time to protect them. Why has it taken so long? We are standing on the shoulders of people like the Panada Moms, who purchased the Panada Theater in 1985, and Mayor Logan, who saved the Sandpoint train depot from demolition in 2014. If we do not keep up the work of historic preservation, our town will become unrecognizable before our very eyes. Please consider accepting the downtown waterfront competition plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sesnes.
That is all that have indicated they wish to speak on this matter. Apologies, Pam Duquette.
Okay, Pam Duquette, Sandpoint resident. Yeah, I have to say I agree with a lot of people. These are grandiose plans, that waterfront design, but I think they're for some other city. There's things we need, sure. I would like to see our money spent on safe streets, sidewalks, helping working wages, lessen property tax, housing, wastewater treatment, healthy urban forests, clean water, peaceful green spaces, and there's a lot more. I know we just suffered through what to me was the demise of one of the best things Sandpoint had. Don't want to bring up Traverse Park again. However, if we proceed with some of that design in the city beach and along the waterfront, I think we're going to have another public upheaval. So whatever we do decide to do should be with the community. So much public engagement, please. And I mean real public engagement. And I'm not sure how to approach that if we're going to try to stick with the evenings. I liked a lot of the things on the plan, but I disliked more. And like I said, it doesn't smack of Sandpoint. Sandpoint's a beautiful place. We have green spaces, we have recreation, you know, enhancing those. But the money, I just think the money going for this and just the competition itself could have been used better spent. You talked about the view of a building from downtown. A 45-foot building is a lot nicer to look at from the water than a 55, 60, 85-foot building. Think about when you're out on the water and you're looking. We didn't talk about that. I don't want to encourage cars downtown. I don't know why we would want to build big parking lots to encourage more people to drive downtown. I would like to lessen the traffic downtown. How we do that, I don't know, the rental bikes, finding maybe park and rides. I've been looking around at empty spots. I know it's hard to find empty spots. I like the 45-foot. Oh, let's see. I was going to say a lot of different things, and then you started talking and I heard everybody else. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot that we need to just take time, slow down, take time. I think we have time. I don't think it's an emergency. We have other emergency things like I listed.
Like this.
Like a leaking roof in the city hall, maybe. So yeah, I guess that's mostly what I wanted to say. So thank you. And yeah, slow down and wait.
Can we give Pam like 30 more seconds?
Sure. That's okay.
Okay.
You think it's going to stop in 30 seconds?
I don't know.
It must be raining more. I'm glad I brought my rain jacket. Yeah, again, you know, let's get everybody involved. Let's not do a Traverse Park thing. Let's bring the community back together. You know, there's a lot of things we can do downtown.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Any further discussion by council, or would you like to provide any directions for next steps?
Madam President, we have one additional member on Zoom that wishes to speak.
Okay.
Talk loud, please.
Rebecca Holland.
Oh. Look at that.
Yeah, I just turned the volume.
Oh, another one. Another one.
Could you just take comments so we can deal with this, please?
I'm sorry. Take the comments.
Take public comment so we can deal with this.
Oh yeah.
Right. Well, we're waiting for.
She's
ready to go.
I muted her.
Okay, let her go.
Hello. So I recall both Councilman Dick and Welker making a strong commitment for public involvement at the very beginning of this downtown competition. In fact, it's at the start, it was delayed for 2 dates for public input to be added. I put those on my calendar, and on both dates, I went to City Hall to attend. On both dates, a planning staff member told me the meeting was only for appointed jury and city staff. The so-called jury was established by the city administrator, I believe. She placed 4 out-of-area architects and engineers on it. 4 local people were chosen. Longtime resident Steve Gill of DEQ, Rob Talbot, a 4-year resident with entertainment interests, Katie Cox of Canucksu Land Trust, and Mayor Shelby. I believe with interest in other pending city projects for Katie Cox and the mayor's own development company interests, these 2 should not have participated in this jury representing the community. Every jury member was paid handsomely for their involvement. In fact, this whole competition project, according to the paper, was budgeted at $500,000 by this council, $500,000. Many residents have felt that many more pressing issues for spending $500,000 of their tax money is known. The environmental issues for protecting Sand Creek was the only purpose for the public to purchase the farm and landing property, not a place for more commerce. Dirty stormwater dumps into the water with every rainfall. I also take issue with not focusing on bikeability in this so-called plan. In 2016, City Council adopted designated bike routes throughout the downtown core, yet none of these are supported in this document. At some point, the council needs to wake up to the needs of Central Sandpoint residents on how their children can safely ride through downtown core to get to City Beach and our 2 waterfront trails. City has a plan for South Sandpoint, but that won't help them. On that note, I'm glad to see that the new council in January will have several members seated that live outside of South Sandpoint, giving a more balanced view, countering the lion's share of attention to South Sandpoint as it currently stands. On another note, I will not be deterred by the oppressive actions taken against me by this council. I will continue to voice the need to see 4 council members who will continue to serve in 2024 to learn from the mistakes of Travers Park fiasco. It's time to recognize what the established residents made loud and clear in the last election, which is to stop pushing reports with expensive makeover plans that the community as a whole do not want.
Thank you, Ms. Holland.
You're welcome.
Any further discussion by council, or would you like to provide any direction or next steps?
We don't have an action on this, or can we reiterate what we're?
It is to accept the final report of the downtown competition. I would entertain a motion to approve a resolution accepting the downtown waterfront design competition final report.
Here's a question for staff. What would it look like? What would be the timing, the expense? What would it look like to open up a final workshop for the public prior to accepting the final plan or the final report?
I don't know if I can give you all the details on that, but I can tell you we can do it. So we could open another workshop. I think obviously I need to coordinate with the design team. We'd have to talk about that a bit more and what that would look like, but it's feasible.
I guess just my deliberation is we are where we are, not just based upon these last 2 years. Okay, not from when we got on here. We're not here just because of when Jennifer Stapleton got here. Our town looks the way it does and feels the way it does because we haven't acted. Okay, we've had councils that put wastewater treatment center on hold or punted and continued to punt and continued to punt. And here we are today, right? One of the greatest things that I enjoyed about this, and I appreciate all the public engagement that we've had, especially lately. And regardless of whatever you think about Travers, I think it's really helped bring the community out to be engaged with the stuff that the city is doing right now. Okay. 2 years ago, when I got here, all we heard was affordable housing, and we don't want to see any more $1 million condos downtown, right? This gives us an opportunity to get some design standards. We heard from Ellie here, who's been with the city for many, many years, that we haven't looked at historic preservation until recently. Okay, the historic preservation, the building heights, the zoning, the land use, all of these go hand in hand, right? We've never had an overarching comprehensive look at downtown, and specifically downtown. I've got emails that come in that said from longtime locals to transplants that say, you know, we want our town just like the way it was, the nostalgic feel of yesteryear, right? But then I also, on the other hand, we've got the shopping district who's got 40+ businesses going, where else would we put the business? Where else would we put them, right? Where don't we want a hustling, bustling downtown of interaction, not just for the tourists, but for the locals as well, right? A lot of your business owners say, you know, I just shut down one of my businesses after 14 years, okay? Some of the stuff that we don't talk about in this community is that Sandpoint doesn't necessarily support Sandpoint 12 months out of the year, right? This gives us an opportunity to take a look at how do we make it more attractive to locals to come down. I heard a story from a guy up on First Street the other day, went to Ponderay for one of his purveyors. He's got a wood shop in town. And he was walking up and he was in line to buy something for his purveyor. And he sat and listened to his Ponderay purveyor say, tell the customer in front of him, I don't go to downtown Sandpoint. I can't park. The traffic is bad. There's too many people walking around. There's too many people doing this, that, and the other thing, right? And that's how we're seen today without doing anything, right? That's how we got here. The design competition is an opportunity to open up that engagement, okay? I agree. The comments on City Beach, I think, are fantastic, right? But we have to move to this next step of, are we just going to sit here and let our community never change because of the nostalgic of it, right? And maybe that's it, and maybe that's it, right? But we also have to take a look at what does that do for independently owned and operated businesses? Hospitality and retail are the second largest employers in this community. They're mostly owned by locals, right? Is that something that we go out to Ponderay if we want more 12-month-a-year business? Where do we want to put it? Or do we want to get more businesses by the high school? I don't know. I'm rather torn. And again, I appreciate all the feedback this evening, but I guess I'm probably leaning towards putting together another workshop specifically on the design competition. But moreover, out of the design competition, the building heights, the land use, what's going on at City Beach, zoning, historic preservation, some of this stuff needs to be handled one way or another. And regardless of whether you like the design competition or not, right? It's all brought this to the forefront of this is what we've got. And we can continue to wait, and we can continue to watch developers build to 65 feet with a 10-foot setback at 45 feet. And if that's the way the town wants to move at this particular juncture, then that's what's going to happen. We do have an opportunity with the design competition to set those standards today, right? To start moving forward today. I keep bringing up the carousel because I've watched Clay and Reno get the community excited about this for the last 8 years and be in this holding pattern right now to do anything with a very generous gift to the community. And I think there's also an opportunity there for a workshop as well too. I don't know, I guess I'd be interested to hear what the other counselors think in terms of, number one, having another public workshop on the design competition. And then furthermore, getting more workshops on the things that I've discussed from the building heights all the way down to historic preservation.
No, appreciate those comments, Madam Mayor. If staff can point us, not just myself, but all of us, what do we lose if we table this, and what do we gain if we move forward, like practically? Like I'm hearing, absolutely, we need to move forward. We need to preserve downtown building heights, but do we need to move forward with this right now to tackle that issue on building heights? And if I'm not being clear, I'd be happy to try to.
No, I think I understand. we're at the end of the competition. If you don't accept the report, we have a lot of work that's gone into a report with next steps in community involvement in implementation and really refinement of this, and priorities that have been pulled out of all of our various master plans to move forward. The document doesn't inform anything without an acceptance. Acceptance does not mean that you're implementing.
Right.
It also doesn't define that what you would implement is going to look exactly like what it does in the plan, because again, it is a visionary document pulling together all of your existing master plans. You can go back to working off of all of your existing master plans, and we could disregard the visioning of what that looks like and try to revision that through the development of all of those master plans. Again, acceptance does not mean you're implementing necessarily any of these capital projects, nor the land use recommendations without direction by council on what your priorities are and how you want to move forward, and whether that's this existing council or next steps you wanted to leave until January when you have new electeds take the seat. You're finalizing a process and acknowledging that we have a vision document that becomes a starting point for a next step.
I feel there's still a misconception that moving forward with this is implementing, and that's just not true. So I'm just having a hard time because I'm hearing people want more input, and I'm not sure if what we lose if we don't move forward. Is there anything we gain, say we accept this? I understand that we're not implementing, but are we able to use this document to leverage grants to have better sidewalks and a better downtown? Am I wrong in that understanding?
No, by accepting the report, you've gone through a visioning process. You've got a vision. It becomes your jumping off point for next steps relative to determining priorities and implementation. It does become a very valuable document in terms of leveraging and pursuing outside funding for some of the elements in the plan should council decide to prioritize those. Couple of examples I can give you on that would be specifically on the Farman's Landing connecting along the waterfront. I just was on the phone today with DEQ, and there's a significant amount of funding that's coming in that is geared around climate change that will be coming through DEQ, and those types of visions on the waterfront about restoring the riparian habitat, returning it to its natural state, having more green planting as opposed to what we've left it become, which is not natural, does not have effective or much of any stormwater treatment. We're essentially outfalling into Sand Creek. That is one project contained in the plan specifically that there is a lot of funding coming through that could support. So you could use this plan as a jumping off point that we have a vision for that development. Certainly could be and would be refined with moving forward to any type of implementation, any type of design, but at least this gets us in the gate in terms of identifying dollars. In addition, they also indicated today that boardwalk extension, for example, getting up to the bridge, so connecting boardwalk bridge between the bridges, that also is an opportunity with that funding as well. Some of those areas along the waterfront are Brownsfields, specifically where they have identified an opportunity for that Cedar Street Terrace next to Cedar Street. Currently, that's in private owner's hand who's willing to coordinate and work with the city and come to an agreement about transferring the waterfront portion of that property to the city so that the city could achieve that terrace down to the waterfront, retain that view that's there, and improve the other hole that we have sitting there as well. funding is available for that as well, to remove the treated poles that are sitting in Sand Creek as well. But we have to move forward in order to be able to obtain any of those dollars and point out, here is where we're going. Here is a vision for what we're doing, again, to be refined. But along Sand Creek, there are significant opportunities.
Right. So I appreciate all that. So we accept to move forward with the final report. Next step.
Next, you could move forward with the visionary report. You could, whether you want to have a workshop ahead of accepting the report. Workshop is not part of the design competition itself, but it could be. But if this would be like point B, we would have to separately undertake that work. If there's changes, that would be a separate contract for this design team, because they performed what they were to perform under the design competition. You could accept the report as a visionary document and use that as a jumping off point then for our next series of public workshops on what do we like, what are the priorities, how do we want to rank these things, where are there issues, where are there components that perhaps need to go back and be revisited. That could occur after you accept a report.
Right. So we're not just accepting a report and going to phase 4, boathouse event. And I'm sorry, it's not up on the screen, boardwalk extension, talking about the water, the bridge over the, like, we're not jumping to that. The next step, if we accept this report, is what I'm hearing is that this could benefit the city more, leveraging for tax dollars, but we're not jumping the gun. I mean, people are going to see that regardless of what happens tonight. If we accept this, they're just going to assume that this big picture that they've been seeing on Facebook of downtown and City Beach, that tomorrow we're going to start digging and we're going to start building. And I just hear it all the time. Whereas those here, I just want to reiterate to make sure what I understand, that we understand that if we move forward with this report, we're able to move forward, leveraging this document that we have for our benefit, but not necessarily jumping the gun. We're able to have public engagement to see what's best and what our needs are.
That's correct. So
I'm trying to understand and hopefully help the public understand what are the pros and cons of moving forward or not moving forward. And clearly, regardless, people are going to feel unheard. People are going to feel unseen. Nothing new. It's life. It happens all the time. But I just want to make sure that we don't leave this meeting without beating a dead horse, resurrecting it again, and beating it down again, because this is going to be a big deal regardless. So that's why I keep bringing it up and talking and making sure that we don't leave here until there's hopefully the clearest possible outcome. So you wanted to hear my thoughts. Those are kind of them, Justin. I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons here. Clearly we hear Mr. Schreiber have really good points, Mr. Tom, really good points. And that's literally how it is with every major decision. Everybody thinks it's one side over the other, but no, you got a lot of people that are usually on one side or the other with really good points. And we up here have to make that final decision. And so here we are.
I guess another question for Jennifer. So with this document, we've had the competition is over, the document exists. So if we don't accept the document, we still own the document and the ideas behind the document.
That's correct. But if you are going to use elements of this vision to pursue funding, to look at leveraging additional resources, what they're going to look to is, do you have a document that you have accepted that it's coming out of there, that there is a path, that we're building on something, that there is a path forward. Okay. So I think the best example I could give to you, Counselor, because you're going to be familiar with this coming up, is this same topic came up relative to Trail Mix. And there was Trail Mix that had done the trail plan, and none of the jurisdictions had adopted that trail plan. So in terms of how they're working together, where they're going, what the vision is for what may happen, there was this plan, but the plan kind of sat on a shelf somewhere, and it isn't a basis for a real significant jump off for anything.
So my next question is, supposing the plan was accepted, where does it live within the city documents?
It would sit as so it's different than and I think that's the other point to this. This is a visioning document culminating our existing master plans. This is not in and of itself its own master plan. You're not adopting a master plan. You are accepting a final report that was a culmination of these other master plans. It would sit on our website where we have our master plans and our reports. So for example, the Leland report that we had done looking at land use and housing needs, that report sits up there. So it's informing our efforts. If we use elements then for pursuing funding, then it is an accepted plan and we have a basis to move forward. And that doesn't mean move forward on every element of it. That still requires council direction through budget, through pursuit of grants, and whether you want further public comment in furthering elements of the vision, or certainly it would be required relative to the land use changes. And with the capital projects, any of it moving forward from a vision to design is going to go through a whole other public process. I think a significant vision that you have in here, which is different than we have in an existing plan, for example, is there are some significant changes which we have talked through in this plan at Bridge and First, at Superior and First coming into town from what is contained in our multimodal plan. How we got there in this document focused in the downtown was looking at what's in our multimodal plan, but then prioritizing that and balancing that with everything else in our other plans. Our plans to some extent are all standalone. This was pulling it together in a vision. You have budgeted in this year's budget to go into design for phase 3 of downtown revitalization. And if you look at particularly Bridge and First, that looks significantly different than what you have in your multimodal plans, especially for a long-term vision. So it gives us some basis to move forward with public input as we are going into design. And obviously there will be a significant discussion point here when it comes to looking at that phase 3. What do you want to do about Bridge Street? Do you want to consider that realignment? Do you want to consider a property is it leave Bridge Street where it is? That needs to be in and of itself its own workshop and discussion moving forward before we could even do phase 3 of downtown revitalization, because we're right there in that area.
So I guess, would this be an appendix to any other plan that we have out there?
No, so it was referenced in your draft comp plan that this would be referenced as an appendix to that plan, but we are still through the public workshop phase and coming back with comp plans. So that becomes a decision point. Once again, you may incorporate it into the plan. You may decide not to incorporate it into the plan.
Okay, thank you.
So from here, if we were to accept the plan, then this would start the public input.
Yes.
For building heights, land use, etc.
For whatever you want to move forward relative to the implementation. This plan contained recommendations on land use implementation and what are suggested first steps. And you will see in years 1 through 5, when you get looking at that infrastructure implementation, that pretty much aligns with planned implementation that we already had with Farman's Landing, phase 3 of downtown revitalization, potentially a phase 4 of downtown revitalization. The elements that were added from an infrastructure point in this visioning document were, for example, the Cedar Street Terrace. We don't have any document anywhere that speaks to doing anything with that property whatsoever. If we don't have a vision, that then we can start having conversations, we can do further workshopping. That is a good example of an opportunity that may not exist. It's in the hands of a private developer who could decide to sell it, who could decide to engage in conversations with the city to achieve a vision, which he has already indicated a willingness to do. But if we don't put forth a vision, we can't even begin the conversation.
Or he could build a 65-foot building based on code right now.
He could. It would be very difficult at that location, but
right.
He could, yes. He could sell it to somebody else who could do that. Your bridge conversation, I think, is an important conversation about what you might want to do moving forward with Bridge Street Bridge when you've got a hole in the ground and you have an opportunity. It had been long talked about in this community for an opportunity to realign Bridge Street. Maybe that is an opportunity we want to undertake, or maybe it's not, but that becomes a discussion point with the public. And when something is rebuilt at that location, you won't be having that discussion. That will be a lost opportunity if, in fact, that is a direction that the community wants to go.
Madam President, so I'd like to point out to the council that we don't need a visionary document to have any of these discussions. We can have all these discussions without this document, but the fact that we know what has been presented doesn't preclude us from including information from this in any discussions or direction we decide to go. We can have discussions about building heights and building codes. We've always had them. We've not had a document to do that. We can have discussions about anything we want in this town without a document to do that. So I'm just trying to make sure that everybody also hears that. That's not to say I'm saying bury your head in the sand, that there's not good information in this document. But I think there's a lot of public perception here. I think that when things are accepted, that actions start to happen a lot faster than what the public is willing to accept in this space. That doesn't mean that we couldn't set up a meeting next month to talk about building height.
So Councilwoman and Don, I see Don raising his hand, but real quick. So what do you see as the pros or cons of accepting or rejecting this concept?
Well, I think that there's a lot of good material in here. I think there's a lot of good stuff about preserving the actual stream bed in and of itself. I like the concept of physically diverting truck traffic out of downtown. And if you put in that roundabout, it will encourage those larger trucks to go around town because you put in a physical barrier to do that. You know, I'd speak to the same things that Councilman Welker spoke to, some of those basic infrastructure types of things that need to happen. I think this document has done a very good job with that, but I think it's pretty evident that the general public is pretty unhappy in many ways about the city beach piece of it. It's not seen as an absolute infrastructure thing we need to do. I think that they're very concerned about the historical context of downtown and the building heights of downtown. And I guess my feeling is I would be willing to potentially accept bits and pieces of this, but not necessarily willing to accept it as a whole document, not in the form that it's in. But I don't know that we need to keep rolling or kicking the can down the road with continuing this open competition anymore. I think they've done their job. They've done what they've done. And whether we decide to do something with this 3 months from now or tonight, that option is always there. Jennifer stated that this is our document now, whether we accept it or not.
So I appreciate all that. And I'm still having a hard, I'm trying to separate the idea of vision and implementation. So we don't accept this. We can't use it to leverage funds to not use our local taxpayers' dollars. Is that, I just want to make sure I'm understanding this, because then what's the point of all this? Like,
I think I can help with a bit of it. And I think Dawn is going to have a larger perspective about this too. Yes, it's used. You use something like this as a jumping off point for discussion with visuals, and you can do it without visuals. It's much harder to do it without visuals, because then people are going off of whatever they're perceiving in their head. And this gives you something with visuals to react to, so we can really have a conversation as to whether that direction is right or whether that direction is wrong. The benefit to having a master plan vision for your downtown, it is defining what we're doing on the city side, but it becomes an important tool as you have private owners in downtown and in your downtown and your developers, and they're looking at what they want to do and how is that going to fit with an overall vision for the downtown. They're not going to go read 10 of our master plans, most likely. Now there is a document that's been accepted by the city. And for example, if you have a developer who's looking at a project in the downtown with an accepted plan like this and a recommendation that we reduce building heights, you're sending an immediate message to a developer that you have a project that, if it is going to need points of approval and you are pushing to get height limits that we have now that doesn't have setbacks that are recommended in this report, you're probably going to have a problem pushing that through, because that's not the direction that we are going as a city. And it, again, isn't defined, adopted with specificity, but we've started to lay out a vision of where we're going, which defines our conversations and where we're going as a public in those conversations, but it starts defining that visual and where we're going for others who are coming in with projects on private property, that many of them trying to figure out what it is that the city wants. Any good developer coming into your town, and they're going to come whether we want them to come or whether they don't. And we don't. And a good developer, and I would say most that we get in our downtown, and there may be many things that we don't like about what we've seen developed of late. But again, this contains land use recommendations that are telling them that some of these things that we've seen that we're currently allowing, that's not the direction we're going. We're going in a different direction. Understanding the vision and what the city wants. They almost always come in, question number one, what is the city's vision? We currently, and haven't previously had something where we can define real well what that vision is. This document starts to do it and also needs refinement moving forward with implementation. But it begins to define that vision so we know what we're talking about. The private sector understands where we are going. It's meant to create a meeting in the middle and a vision for what we want our downtown to look like in 5 years and 20 years. And without a vision, you're going to have the private sector define it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've never built a house myself. I see my dad build 2 houses and a restaurant, and it's always started with the vision. It's always started. I've never seen anybody build a house just with their mind, and maybe they have. But most times I see an architect, a vision. They realize they don't have the funds. They realize it's not going to work, and they work backwards from their vision back. To me, it's very simple. So I'm having a hard time understanding. Because there's a psychological aspect in this, obviously, trying to preserve our town, whatever that means, because it's going to be something different to whoever you talk to. I don't want to see developers define our downtown where they cut access. Go ahead. Oh yeah, sorry, Don, I told you could speak. Go ahead. I mean, go ahead.
I'm sorry to butt in, but on the other hand, I think it's probably appropriate of what this is, and it should not be referred to as a plan. Jennifer's talking specifically about this as a vision. This is the first time when you've been able to take all the various pieces that you have been working on, all the increments, and weave them together into a fairly common statement of what it is. Now, I see the real role of this document as being a framework for discussion, for further discussions and further input about what's going on. The thing that the jury felt as they went through this and specifically the GGLO proposal was that if some of the increments, the pieces weren't realized, it didn't make the whole plan go away. So you lose a piece here, you lose a piece there, and as you say, your dad said, well, I can't afford oak doors, so I'm going to have pine doors or something like that. I mean, if those kinds of decisions and the framework, this provides the framework for those kinds of discussions and for the community to go forward with. The other element I would say that is important about this document as a framework is it shows how pieces relate to each other. So you might have a discussion on First Ave and the building setbacks and those kinds of things. But how does that impact what you see from the other side of Sand Creek? What happens if you're on the east side and you make those kind of actions on the west side? So it informs those kinds of decisions that the community can make further down the line, the community and council make down the line. It is not a plan. It is a framework for further discussion.
Well, and I think when you were talking about the pieces and parts that you like, and if this accepting the report will enable us to give funding for Sand Creek, for water treatment, for et cetera, and if we don't accept it, then we lose out on that funding. Is that correct?
We have it contained in, we currently have a plan for Sand Creek, which didn't get into this level of depth. Stormwater calcs weren't run. It was contained in our Parks and Rec master plan. So again, without an adopted vision framework, you're back to working off of individual plans. Your risk with working off of individual plans without this pulled together in a vision is you can jump off of your existing plan and say we're doing Sand Creek and we don't know what that looks like until we're pursuing funding. We're moving into a design phase on that. This again is a framework visual that we can start having those conversations if adopted. In pursuing funding, we're moving into, for example, requesting design of this. This is how it fits into our downtown. Here is our vision for this. We can put dollars to it. And then we go through another round of actual design with it. And it's a guarantee you're going to see changes from what you see at this high level conceptual phase. We've seen that with every project that we've done. We had that conversation about downtown revitalization. We had a whole planned streetscape and what that was going to look like. And then when we went to implementation, it was a different number of trees. Stormwater looked a bit different. Number of parking spots changed because now we're into the full geometrics of engineering design. But again, having the framework and saying this is where we're going, you with community input control what that looks like. We're not off applying for grants. We're not off implementing projects without council direction that here are pieces and components we want you to work on. And then with an accepted plan, then there is the opportunity to leverage dollars saying we want to move forward on working on this. Here is our adopted, here's our accepted framework visual, and we're moving this to the next phase. Without that, you're starting from square one. So you are not competing with somebody who's going to be further along with a vision of where they're going. They're going to have a more shovel-ready project.
Madam President.
Yes.
Excuse me. This has been a great discussion. There's been so much shared that was really well said. And I wish I could respond to all of it, but it would take too long and I couldn't recall it all. But I do want to make a few points. First of all, I want to thank everybody, the hundreds of people in the community that participated in developing this vision over the last several months. And I want to thank GGLO for the excellent work that they did, really coalescing all this work together, combing through our existing master plans, really coming up with their perspective on what the essence of Sandpoint is. I want to thank the jury for their work in synthesizing that, validating it. And I think what we ended up with here is just a fantastic product. And I think if council doesn't accept this plan, I think it would be a travesty considering the amount of money that was invested in it, the amount of effort that was put into this from the hundreds of community members that gave in their feedback, their criticism, their insight. We have a vision now that was not easily come to, that was from the efforts of many people with very differing perspectives on what Sandpoint is and should be. And this is a big dream. This is a big vision. And not everything in this plan is equally, maybe equally representative of Sandpoint's identity, or maybe even an aspiration that ultimately Sandpoint wants. But it is a vision. It is, as Dawn says, as Jennifer said repeatedly, it is something for us to continue to respond to and have an engaging conversation, community conversation about how to move forward. And if we don't have a vision, we are simply reacting to whatever happens to us. And this puts us in the driver's seat, and it gives us, the city of Sandpoint, the community, the ability to direct growth, direct change in a way that respects the character and respects the greatest aspirations of the city of Sandpoint. If we don't do that, if we don't approve this plan, it just becomes a document that sits on the shelf and is hardly ever looked at again. And we've seen multiple examples of that. I appreciate, Jennifer, that you brought up the Trails Master Plan. That was a similar effort. A lot of work went into that from a lot of different agencies over several years. And it was really a travesty to just see it put on a shelf and never looked at again. On the other hand, I think what this relates to most in my mind is the Downtown Streets Design Guide from 2012. There was a very similar kind of, and that was mentioned earlier too, that was a very similar kind of community-wide effort, which at the time was a very robust public engagement effort, and we came up with a vision. By the time we actually got down to engineering and designing the downtown streets, it changed dramatically from what the Downtown Streets Design Guide had laid out. But that was a good thing. It evolved. It evolved as we had more information. We put more engineering into it. We got more public feedback, even though we already had a lot of public feedback up to that point. That's how the process works. There's a lot of people that contributed to this plan, even people that have spoken tonight that have been critical of it. This plan does not represent, nobody's going to get everything that they want in a single plan. This plan is not to represent any single person's absolute vision. This is a collective effort of a lot of different people, and it does its best to embrace everybody's vision here and synthesize that down to a single picture that we can all respond to, we can all engage a community conversation around. And I think it did that really well. And I also want to say that whatever is the most valuable in this plan will rise to the surface. If it's popular and it's a community need, like let's say, for instance, protection of water quality, right? The impetus of this plan from the start was protection of the stormwater flowing into Sand Creek. If we do nothing and we continue to do nothing as we have, we will continue. We have made some steps to treat stormwater downtown with the redesign of the downtown streets. We've accommodated a certain amount of stormwater. But with this plan, we envision really taking the next huge step and addressing that stormwater, which is a major source of pollution that's entering into our waterway there at Sand Creek. Meanwhile, the shore of Sand Creek is eroding into Sand Creek, and as was already mentioned, you know, it's not basically it's a well, I won't even go there. So this is, by the way, the fourth iteration of the waterfront, a conceptual rendering of the waterfront there on Sand Creek. 4 in the last 8 years in this administration. And with each iteration, it continues to get refined. We just completed a Parks and Rec master plan, and what was that, approved in 2019. And that plan envisioned major changes to Sandpoint City Beach, major changes to the marina area, boat launch area there, major changes to the Sand Creek landing there. And that process at the time was, and I think still perhaps maybe the most robust public engagement effort the city's ever undertaken in that plan. And this was an effort to take all of those concepts one step further and give them one more consideration, another step of refinement. And that process will go on and on with each significant element in this plan. Some of them won't make it. Some of them won't make the cut because they won't be popular enough. People won't want them and they won't happen. Others will be, and they will continue to get refined through workshops, through public engagement, through design and engineering, until we get to a place where the public is happy with the result and we get what we want. And so I think it's critical that we really just step back and hold that perspective and really appreciate the value and the effort that has been put into this, and don't throw it away. This is a valuable vision that the community has created. Let's give it its due and know that this is a work in progress and we can always make it better. But to just throw it away because of a few critical voices that didn't get everything they wanted, they will continue to have an opportunity to be heard and refine the plan going forward, refine the vision going forward with each element of the plan as it comes before the council again. So I would really implore the council to support the work that's been done and approve this plan. Thank you.
Okay.
I feel that we're literally in this position in Sandpoint. Granted, I don't have a family that goes back as far as you do back there, but because there wasn't a vision, life just went on and building department said, looks good, build there. And it's like, oh, built on somebody's property. Well, the Seasons got there. I remember that as a kid, I used to play there, but now there's condos. Some are happy about it, some are not. Point being is there was no vision, and we didn't get to dictate what happened there. Developers got to dictate what happened there. Some may agree with it, some may not. But I think the point here is that we get to be in the driver's seat and know this is not going to be implemented, and we're not going to be starting changing City Beach tomorrow, and we're not going to be changing XYZ. It's a visionary document that I don't know any part of my life that if it's not structured, it works out good. There's no vision. It's, you know, I don't parent that way. I don't do my marriage that way. We don't do our business that way. And I think we need a vision. Otherwise, we're going to have a downtown that, ironically, what people don't want this document or this vision is, I think 20 years down the road, we're going to look back and be like, oh, I can't walk down there. I can't enjoy that piece of waterfront. I can't do X, Y, and Z because we weren't in the driver's seat. So if we can use this vision to leverage for us to be more in control and the people, then I think it's great. Deb, you're absolutely right. Do we need this visionary document to talk about building heights? Absolutely not. We can talk about the bridge. We can talk about building heights. We can talk about sidewalks and roads without this visionary document. But if we can still do that and leverage and be more in control because of this visionary document, then why not? And please correct me if you think I'm wrong. If you have a different opinion, that I want to hear it. But that's where I'm trying to weigh the pros and cons, because I understand that I'm not going to be here forever. You guys aren't going to be here forever. You guys out there aren't going to be here forever. They're not going to be here. So what can we set in place to protect those who are here when we're not here and you're not here? When my kids are here, when your kids are here, or your grandkids are here, that leaves this administration, whether it's us or not, in the driver's seat to work with those in the private sector to do what's best for the community with public engagement, not implementation tomorrow, but focusing on what our needs are today and moving forward. That's all I got to say about that.
Would someone like to make a motion?
Yeah, I think so. And I thank you for your comments. Thank you, Mayor, as well, too. I think I'd like to make a motion to accept the final report as a visioning document / framework, and also set up workshops for building heights and historic preservation seem to go together, land use and zoning. City Beach seems like it needs a specific workshop, and the carousel.
Second.
This will be a roll call vote.
Councillor McAllister?
Yes.
Councillor Rule?
No.
Councillor Spadaro?
Yes.
Councillor Dick?
Yes.
Motion carries. Is there any other public forum that we need to, anybody else signed up for public forum?
Madam President, we have one that wishes to gift 3 minutes to Teresa Stevens if she's still here. Kathy Alderman.
Kathleen gave me her 3 minutes so I could finish what I was saying. I'm Teresa Stevens from the city. I was talking about the...
Excuse me, Teresa, they can't hear you. Can you pull the mic a little closer?
Yes, thank you. I was talking about the ground. Oh my gosh. I have to get my glasses.
Okay.
I'm so sorry, you guys. I just was talking about the groundbreaking ceremony after the two concerned citizens sat under the willow tree for a week. I just resent it when people come to us and say we didn't do enough. I felt like that we did enough. I felt like at the ground ceremony, there were only certain people allowed in there. It did not feel like a city event. I felt like an outsider. I felt like the news that was going to go to Spokane and throughout the Northwest would be that this was a pleasant event for our community. And our community represents the history of this town. And that was not represented at all that day. That's why we yelled. I'm sorry we yelled, but I felt like it had to be done. So, I was doing good before you guys stopped me earlier. You just have no idea what we've been through this summer as a family and as a community that loves each other. And I just want you to listen. I feel like to accept a plan like you just now accepted is to say most of this plan is something the community is going to get behind, but I don't believe that it is. So I would think that you would want to accept the things that you like about it and not the things that you don't like. There are so many things about it you don't like. So why are you accepting the whole plan so that we have to just decipher it all and pull it apart again? I don't understand why you guys have to step forward on things because of fiscal responsibility. What about the hearts and the desires of the people who live here and the people who will live here? And I don't mean to keep beating a dead horse either. I've thought about that all day, Joel. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I'm hurting. And I know a lot of people are hurting. Thank you.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
One moment while I check Zoom. We have one on Zoom, Maureen Ballard.
Hello and good evening. My name is Maureen. Hello and good evening. My name is Maureen Ballard. I am a past Sandpoint resident and soon to be future Sandpoint resident. I've been attending all waterfront design meetings this summer and as many meetings as I can while raising a small child and working. So it's not hard. It's hard to show up to these things, but it's also possible. Thanks for everyone's testimony today. I just want to close with, I also don't understand why we need to rush in and accept this document. It might be a good one, but I think that the City Council needs to prioritize building back public trust. That absolutely needs to come first. Nothing is going to be able to unfold as planned unless we have the whole community weighing in on this. So I would like to also support Deb's proposal that firstly, let's look at code. Let's define code firstly and independently of the waterfront design document. Then let's build back public trust. And only then shall we perhaps review again what this document is about. It's probably got a lot of great stuff, but there's so many little points to it that it's hard for the rest of us to stomach it. And that's all. That's all for now. So I implore you to please reconsider and yeah, just recognize what's actually important here is that we come together as a community before we make massive changes like this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ballard.
That is all that wish to speak.
All right, having no one else for public comment, with no further business before the council, this meeting is now adjourned at 8:35 p.m.